Good evening. Will the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development please come to order? Before the committee can proceed with the business before it, it must elect a chairperson. Are there any nominations? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
I'd like to nominate MLA Moyes for chair and MLA Kennedy for vice chair.
So we'll do the chairperson first. Emily Moyes has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Emily Moyes, will you please take the chair?
Our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations?
Yes,
Honourable Minister Marcelino.
yes, I'd like to nominate MLA Kennedy for vice chair.
MLA Kennedy has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, MLA Kennedy is elected vice chairperson. Before proceeding with the business before the committee, I want to make everyone aware that this evening we have staff collecting footage of the Assembly's educational video series inside the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. Our camera operator has permission from the speaker to film from a variety of angles, and so we'll be moving around the room. As a reminder to all of those here this evening, no other photography or video is allowed in the committee room. Thank you for your cooperation. This meeting has been called to consider the following bills. Bill number 7, the Public Sector Construction Projects Tendering Repeal Act, Bill number 9, the Employment Standards Code Amendment Act, and Bill number 21, the Public Schools Amendment Act. I would like to inform all in attendance of the provisions in our rules regarding the hour of adjournment. A standing committee meeting to consider a bill must not sit past midnight to hear public presentations or to consider clause by clause of a bill except by unanimous consent of the committee. Written submissions from the following persons have been received and distributed to committee members on the MLA portal, and they are Ben McGilvery, private citizen, on Bill 7, George Emery, OPC MIA Local 222 on Bill 7, Ryan Seller, International Brotherhood of Boilermakers on Bill 7, Robert Duarte, Iron Workers Local 728 on Bill 7, and Alana Duffy, MS Canada, on Bill 9. Does the committee agree to have these documents appear in the Hansard transcript of this meeting? Agreed and so ordered. Prior to proceeding with public presentations, I'd like to advise members of the public regarding the process for speaking in committee. In accordance with our rules, a time limit of 10 minutes has been allotted for presentations, with another 5 minutes allowed for questions from committee members. Questions shall not exceed 30 seconds in length, with no time limit for answers. Questions may be addressed to presenters in the following rotation. First, the minister sponsoring the bill. Second, a member of the official opposition. And third, an independent member. If a presenter is not in attendance when their name is called, they will be dropped to the bottom of the list. If the presenter is not in attendance when their name is called a second time, they will be removed from the presenters list. The proceedings of our meetings are recorded in order to provide a verbatim transcript. Each time someone wishes to speak, whether it be an MLA or a presenter, I first have to say the person's name. This is the signal for the Hansard recorder to turn the mics on and off. On the topic of determining the order of public presentations, I'll also note that we do have out-of-town presenters in attendance marked with an asterisk on the list. With these considerations in mind, then, in what order does the committee wish to hear the presentations? Minister Schmidt.
I would like to suggest that we hear from out-of-town in-person presenters first, and then proceed with the regular order.
With these considerations in mind, we will hear the presentations from out-of-town presenters first. It's been suggested by the Honourable Minister Schmidt that we will hear presenters from out-of-town first, if they're in person. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much for your patience. We'll now proceed with public presentations. I will now call on Kevin Rebeck from the Manitoba Federation of Labour. Kevin Rebeck, please proceed with your presentation.
Great, thank you. I'm Kevin Rebeck, the president for the Manitoba Federation of Labour. The Manitoba Federation of Labour is Manitoba's central labour body, representing the interests of over 30 affiliated unions and over 130,000 Manitoban workers in the public and private sectors, as well as the building trades. This includes manufacturing, government offices, retail stores, hospitals, schools, natural resources, tourism, agriculture, and many others. I'm glad to be here tonight speaking in favor of this government making the smart, prudent decision to lift Brian Pallister's boneheaded ban on project labour agreements. PLAs are powerful tools for creating good family-supporting jobs, which is why Brian Pallister hated them. This ban has been detrimental to good-paying, family-supporting construction jobs for Manitobans and robbed Manitobans of the many benefits of PLAs, including strong health and safety standards, opportunities for apprentices and historically unrepresented groups of workers like women, Indigenous, and BIPOC workers. Brian Pallister's ban has flown in the face of a decades-long tradition of using project labour agreements, or PLAs, to build large public infrastructure projects in our province. A tradition started, I might add, by PC Premier Duff Roblin with the building of the Red River Floodway. PLAs have long been used across North America in the public and private sector. They are pre-hire collective bargaining agreements negotiated by project owners and workers that govern wages, benefits, and other work conditions. Project owners and workers alike benefit since the agreements support a consistent supply of high-quality labour and avoid costly work stoppages resulting from labour disputes, while ensuring a strong floor for wages, training, and workplace safety and health. Often, these agreements also include commitments to ensure that the investment benefits the local economy and workforce, such as setting targets for supporting small businesses or targeting hiring efforts to economically disadvantaged communities. These agreements benefit working families, our economy, and all Manitobans who benefit from the vital infrastructure which is built to last by well-trained workers who make a decent living. Manitoba's labour movement has been clear all along that PLAs are the right way to go because they've served Manitobans well for decades. PLAs consistently deliver high-quality hydro dams, hospitals, and other infrastructure. Work environments on these projects are complex, and dozens of employers and hundreds to thousands of workers may come in and out over a long period of time. Like a Manitoba hydro dam, in such complex work environments, PLAs provide for stability through consistent labour standards, wages, and human resource procedures and practices, all while guaranteeing there will be no strikes or lockouts for the full duration of each project. And while right-wing commentators and members of the opposition continue to peddle the myth that these agreements are forced unionization, under PLAs, any contractor, small or large, union or non-union, is free to bid for work. If they win a tender, they are then required to pay fair wages to their workers and pay a fair share to the cost of training workers. But we're glad to see at least one PC MLA tell the truth during Brian Pallister's time in office. As noted in Hansard, former MLA for Midland and Minister of Infrastructure Blaine Pedersen had the courage to say what many of his colleagues wouldn't say about PLAs. He said, "There is no forced unionization in a project labour agreement. In a project labour agreement, there is not a compulsion to join the union, full stop." I would encourage members opposite to join their former colleague in seeing the light. We have seen many quality infrastructure projects in Manitoba completed on time and under budget using PLAs. In fact, the floodway expansion under the NDP government came in $38 million under budget, demonstrating the productive value of PLAs. With so many obvious advantages, it's clear there's truly no merit in PLAs. No merit in opposing project labour agreements. Such agreements avoid labour-related disruptions on projects using predetermined dispute resolution processes to resolve disputes on-site and by prohibiting work stoppages, including strikes and lockouts. They secure the commitment of all stakeholders, employers and employees on a construction site so the project will proceed efficiently without unnecessary interruptions. These agreements prevent the practice of multiple contractors from undercutting each other in the bidding process by driving down wages and cutting corners on safety training and qualifications. This race to the bottom affects those who are employed on a project through substandard wages and working conditions, but it also freezes out those contractors, including local ones, who want to employ highly qualified workers and pay them what they're worth. It disadvantages all Manitobans and their communities by robbing them of the benefits that result when Manitoba's workers are employed in well-paid family-supporting jobs by Manitoba companies. PLAs are also a powerful tool for providing the training and experience needed to build the skilled workforce Manitoba needs, now and into the future. This is especially important given the fact that Manitoba is facing a skilled worker shortage. To have any hope of addressing this skilled labor shortage, government needs to be doing everything it can to train up Manitobans and ensure there's work for them to build their careers right here at home. The Pallister PC approach of failing to train, cutting apprenticeship opportunities, and forcing Manitobans to find work in other provinces because of a lack of investment was the wrong approach. Because they contain requirements to train workers and provide apprenticeship opportunities, PLAs not only provide workers with the skills and qualifications needed on a specific project, they also provide skills and qualification workers can build on and use throughout their careers. That benefits those workers, Manitoba's employers, and our economy. PLAs often contain specific requirements for training and hiring workers who are underrepresented in the trades, including Indigenous and women workers. Those underrepresented groups are key to building the skilled workforce our province needs now and going forward. And while PLAs ensure a strong floor for wages and training, they also ensure strong health and safety on the job to make sure that all workers come home safely at the end of the day. The MFL wholeheartedly supports the repeal of this regressive piece of legislation. Manitoba workers, families, and communities will be better off for it now and into the future. And we look forward to the government bringing back the tried and true model that PLAs provide to Manitobas to benefit from public investments in infrastructure. The MFL was encouraged to read that Bill 7 will bring back good-paying union jobs to public projects in the government's news release announcing the bill in March. And now that Brian Pallister's ban on PLAs being lifted, we'd like to see government create a framework to harness the power of PLAs and use Manitoba's building trades union labor to build Manitoba. We know that government will have a number of projects on the horizon, like the next phase of Winnipeg's North End sewage treatment plant, the wind farms that form the centerpiece of the government's recently released clean energy plan, and more. Lifting Brian Pallister's ban provides the perfect opportunity for the provincial government to start building with reliable, local Manitoba building trades union workers once again. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
I have two, do I have time to do two questions? If it's 30 seconds. Oh, so I only have one question? Thank you, Mr. Rebeck, for your presentation again, and thank you for the MFL's continued expertise and advocacy for workers across our province. I have two questions, if you have time. The first is that unions have a safety advantage compared to non-unionized places. Can you speak a little bit about why you think unions have that? And secondly, if you could talk about the costs related to PLAs and why they would be worth it in the long run.
Please proceed.
I think you need to say my name, right?
Please proceed, Kevin Rebeck.
Thank you. Yes, to speak to the safety issue, it is a demonstrable fact, and I can pull up statistics, but that unionized workers are safer work environments. Largely that's because, A, they're able to elect representatives to serve on their health and safety committee, and they tend to have a dispute resolution process for grievances or to raise issues, and knowing that they have someone to back them up if they want to raise safety concerns or issues, to be able to make sure that they're taken seriously and dealt with and have processes to do that. So union workers, workers with a collective agreement, workers with a PLA are better off for having stronger processes and advocates to help them ensure that their rights are protected at work and that they're able to finish their shift and go home at the end of it safely and whole. In addition to that, I think you asked about kind of the long-term benefits of this. Well, we've reaped the long-term benefits of PLAs for many years on projects that are often done under their deadline timeframe and under budget. We've seen that with the floodway expansion. We've seen that with other project labor agreements as well. Having that stable workforce for the life of a project, knowing that we're supporting good family supporting jobs enriches our economy helps families and Manitobans get ahead, and ensures that all local businesses can apply on a level playing field without just trying to bid it by undercutting workers' wages or cutting corners on safety. So there's long-term benefits and immediate ones for Manitobans.
Thank you. Do other members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Thank you very much for your time, Kevin Rebeck. I'd like to call on Nicholas Adams, please.
Okay, he's in the room, so we'll move to the next in-person out-of-town presenter, who's Mr. Shaw.
I'd like to call on Mr. Sean Wood.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next in-person.
I'd like to call on Mr. Connor Ketchum. I'd like to call on Mrs. Lois Rustin. I'd like to call on Mr. Kylie Parker. Mr. Kylie Parker, please proceed with your presentation.
Hi, my name is Kylie Parker. I was born and raised in Portage Prairie, Manitoba. Just to give you a little bit of background of my experience in the construction industry. When I was 18 years old, I joined the Canadian Armed Forces and I spent 6 years as a tank driver. And when I got to the Army, I was in Alberta at the time, and I went up to the oil patch and I started working in the open pit mines in Alberta, non-union. And that's where I cut my teeth in construction, and I wound up in Manitoba pursuing a blaster's license. So I use explosives in mining and in industrial projects. And that brought me up to the Kias generating station. For 4.5 years, I worked on that project. So I've worked non-union, union, on project labor agreements, and not under project labor agreements. A little bit about my background. PLAs are a powerful tool used by the government to ensure that Manitobans get the most out of our public dollars that are funding or helping to fund construction projects in the province. Really, they are a way to maximize our investment when we're spending our money in Manitoba. A construction project can be much more than a contractor completing the job and moving on. By utilizing a PLA, the government can ensure that we are training our next generation of journey people by requiring certain apprenticeship numbers on the job. So most jobs, yeah, you're going to have apprentices on them, but there's nothing mandating to have X amount of apprentices on the job to make sure that we're building the next generation of workforce, because we have a lot of journey people that are retiring. And we need to train people big time, and we need to build up that pool. And a PLA is a perfect way to do it, because you're going to have the numbers and they're going to be reported on. So it's a way to make sure that we're training and those folks are getting their levels and they're moving up, and they're not getting stuck as a level 1 or a level 2 for years and years and not moving along, right? So that's one example. PLAs can use to ensure equity hiring, to make sure that folks that traditionally aren't part of construction, we're going to bring them in. And a PLA is the best way to do that, because we can have equity hiring, but then we can also ensure a workplace that's welcoming, respectful for these folks that traditionally aren't construction workers. And when I say that is, on a project labor agreement, you have representation, and it's well used. I was a job steward up on the Kiest project and helped a lot of folks through tough times when they were at work, and that was part of their membership, being a union member. That was part of my job on top of my regular duties up there. And we need to invite those folks in, because we need more and more people in the construction industry, and we need women, especially in construction. And there's a lot of barriers there that have been there for a long time that keep women out of construction. And under PLA, the project, the province can mandate how we're going to run a construction project. And that means that you're going to have bathrooms for females, males, and others as well. It's hard enough to get bathrooms on a construction project most of the time just for use in general, let alone having them there for, gendered. And people don't realize that that's a big thing that keeps women out of the field and out of the trades. And that's just the little things, but the province can dictate it. It's up to you, right? It's not up to the contractor or whether the contractor wants to agree with it, right? That's the power of the PLA when you're on the job site. PLAs can require through language in the agreement that Manitobans will get priority hiring, with emphasis on real opportunities for locals when hiring, and not just job numbers by sticking them with the worst, least skilled jobs on the site. Again, that's utilizing your power and making the project labor agreement the way that we want to see the business done here in Manitoba. And, in my experience, and I think other people will, can agree with it, that when we're doing work and it's on treaty land or it's on traditional lands like Kiosk was, there's often quotas of having to hire locals. But that doesn't mean they have to have good opportunities and good jobs. Most of those folks end up, in housekeeping, working in the kitchen, and they're not getting an opportunity for a trade if they want, and to continue on in a career of construction. Once the project's done, it shuts down, the camp's gone, they're out of their job, and they don't really have anything to work with. And that's gone on a long time. So we can strengthen that where, the province is saying we have to hire this many people, but you also have to have them, this many people, if they want it, in the trades, in an apprenticeship, to build that career, not just have a job while the project's there. So that's how powerful it can be for you. They offer great, labor stability through the project, right? No strikes, no lockouts for the duration of the project. Very straightforward. Manitobans, they allow Manitobans to earn good wages, health benefits, and pensions for their retirement, which again is great for our local economy. Folks out there need good paying jobs right now. Everyone's behind. If you're working class people, a lot of folks don't have 2 pennies to rub together at the end of the pay period. That's just reality right now. So when folks are working dangerous jobs and working long hours, that should mean something in their bank account. Removing wages from the bidding process. So a contractor has to rely on its efficiencies, productivity, and quality to make money on the job, and not by making money off of the backs of workers. That's a big part of what a PLA can provide to Manitoban workers. High safety standards. So Manitobans don't feel pressured to work unsafe or intimidated for reporting a safety issue. Again, it's factual. Union jobs are safer. All right, because people aren't pressured and they don't feel like they have to do something that they may lose their job, or they may lose overtime, or they may have a punitive action taken against them by a foreman or a superintendent because they got in trouble because they had an unsafe work area and they reported, or they told them to do something unsafe. And if they weren't going to do it, then they were going to be punished. That's a reality. If you don't believe that, then you haven't worked on a construction site. Project labor agreements are a way for our government to extract maximum value and opportunity out of a construction project. And in today's economy, Manitoba needs to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide good, safe jobs and taking a different approach to construction, something that isn't just dollars and cents, and where labor isn't just a line item when someone's bidding on the project. So I appreciate your time, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Parker, for your presentation today and for coming out. I just wanted to let you know that your comments the last time you were here during the implementation of this bill the first time were actually quite moving for me to read. You did say something and alluded to it again today, then and alluded to it again today regarding the ability of folks to come in to a project as maybe like a entry-level position, and then you said that after a few years, by the end of the project, they were already leveled up to some other next level for apprenticeship or even finished their requirements for their trade. Can you give me an example of how something like this can happen over the length of time of a PLA or for the length of time of this agreement?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last part. I have a cold. My ears are a little blood right now.
Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Can you please give me an example of somebody that you know, if you can mention, or an example of how this could be that somebody would have like an entry-level position to begin with, and then by the end of the project, they're already at the next level for their trade designation?
Yes.
Just one sec. Kylie Parker. Go
Yes,
ahead.
on the Kiosk project, an ex-member, his name was Kyle Ott, and he was a laborer. And labor is a hard job, especially when you're pouring a lot of concrete up on a dam. And Kyle wanted to do something a little bit different and not be on the end of a jackhammer for 12 hours a day, so he wanted to become an apprentice with the carpenters. And on that job site, because of the numbers that were needed, you could approach a different trade and you could go, I want to transfer and I want to become a carpenter. And because that project, there was civil work on that project for 6 years, 7 years, there was carpenters on there. Kyle left that project as a Red Seal carpenter because he worked up there the whole time. And, that's carried on. I'm still friends with Kyle, and, his career has taken him many other places, but, that's one example of that happening. And another example I have is a good friend of mine from Nelson House. Stu Francois started working on these projects as being a local. Wasquatum was his first dam that he worked on, and started off as a GL and got put on to drill and blast crew. And through Wasquatum and through Kias, Stu worked on drill and blast, and Stu became a licensed blaster. A lot of people don't realize, like on that project, the 2,500 craft workers that are up there, only the blasters are licensed by the province to do their job, because we're detonating sometimes 100,000 kilograms of explosive, and we can really send things sideways. So that was another person through those project labor agreements that got equity, was first on the board to get hired, because Stu was from Nelson House and Wasquatum was on the traditional lands of Nelson House, and got set on that path and as a successful trade as a blaster. So there was two, sorry.
Before I go on, just a reminder that question to the members of the committee that questions are to be 30 seconds, so just a friendly reminder. Are there other members of the committee that have questions? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you, Mr. Parker. This is maybe more of a comment, but I just want to say thank you for sharing your experiences and for presenting here at committee tonight and taking time out of your evening. So I just wanted to share and express my appreciation for that. So thank you, Mr. Parker.
It was my pleasure.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, moving on to Bill number 9, I'd like to call Kevin Rebeck back. Kevin Rebeck, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Rebeck, back again, President of the Federation of Labor still, and we still represent over 100,000 unionized workers in the public and private sector. I'm here tonight to commend this government for making a simple and straightforward update to our Employment Standards Code to ensure that the code aligns with federal employment insurance benefits, EI, and that very sick and injured workers will have job-protected leave when they need to access federal EI sickness benefits, which provides for up to 26 weeks of financial assistance if workers are unable to work with medical reasons. And while this legislation fix is very simple, it's taken far too long to make because of inaction by the previous PC government, followed up by the disgusting decision to delay this legislation made by the PC opposition last spring. As a result, Manitoban workers have waited almost 2 years for the ability to access full EI sickness benefits without fear of losing their job. Historically, the Labour Management Review Committee, which is made up of employer and union representatives, has recommended that Manitoba's Employment Standards Code align unpaid job-protected leave provisions with the duration of federal EI benefits. This has been standard practice because unions and employers that make up the LMRC have always agreed that our provincial laws should make sure that workers are fully able to access federal EI benefits they are entitled to without fear of losing their job for doing so. In December of 2022, nearly 2 years ago now, the federal government expanded the available EI sickness benefits from 15 weeks to a maximum of 26 weeks. Shortly after that, the co-chairs of the Labour Management Review Committee, myself and Management Co-Chair Peter Whiteman, wrote to then Minister of Labour John Reyes to ask him to follow the standard practice of aligning our Employment Standards Code to ensure that workers who access the full EI benefit have job-protected unpaid leave to do so. I stress that we wrote to him because the minister's office didn't seem to notice or care that our Employment Standards Code was now out of step with the length of time of EI sickness benefits. Months later, in May, the minister wrote to LMRC saying that yes, he would like our advice on how to proceed, even though we had already recommended updating the code. We took that opportunity to recommend that to him again, and then we waited and waited. But unfortunately, the PC government decided against making this simple, straightforward legislative amendment as quickly as possible. I guess very sick, injured, and vulnerable workers in Manitoba just weren't a priority for them, despite the consensus advice of Labour and business that they do something about the gap in our legislation. Unfortunately, the previous Minister of Labour, and frankly, the entire PC government, wasn't interested in following that standard practice and listening to the consensus recommendations of employers and Labour. Instead, they've left sick and vulnerable workers twisting in the wind for almost 2 years while they dragged their feet and delayed a very simple, straightforward way to make sure that workers didn't lose their job for taking EI sickness benefits beyond 17 weeks. To make matters worse, now that they're in opposition, the PCs decided to delay this bill further, claiming that consultation was needed. Well, newsflash to the PC caucus and the former Minister of Labour, consultation on this bill already happened with unions and employers. We sent our joint consensus recommendation over a year and a half ago, and it was ignored. I'm disgusted that the PC caucus decided to hold up Bill 9 because of all these PC delay tactics. It was possible for workers to access the full 26-week EI sickness benefits, but still be terminated by their employer after their leave lasted more than 17 weeks. So thank you to this government, and particularly to the current Minister of Labour, for moving ahead on Labour Management Review Committee's advice from a year and a half ago. Sick and vulnerable workers will have more job security as a result. And to the PC opposition, I hope that you can reflect on what you've done and think twice the next time you consider playing politics with the lives and livelihoods of working Manitobans, especially their most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thanks again, Mr. Rebeck, for your presentation, for your time here today. You know, during, I think it was first reading and maybe second reading, members of the opposition brought up in debate issues like not enough consultation with small business owners, perhaps. I'm not sure if they knew about what the Labour Management Review Committee is. Can you maybe speak to any kind of discussions or any kind of concerns those folks might have had? I know that ultimately you had a consensus decision, which is, you know, really, really wonderful. But can you speak a little bit about that?
Kevin Rebeck.
Sure. The Labour Management Review Committees existed for a long time under various governments. It's made up of representatives from Labour and business. It includes a representative from the Chamber of Commerce, among other groups, and represents the broad view of business. They have an internal process by which they consult and deal with business owners and leaders. We come together and try to build consensus as much as possible. We have a very good track record of finding reasonable, level-headed solutions to move forward. And on the issue of something as simple as making sure that when people are accessing a legitimate federal government benefit that's been provided to them, that their job isn't at risk, has never been a debate point. In fact, it's been one that we've had one discussion, said, let me double check with my group if there's a concern. Business has gone back, come back right away and said, no, this is about as simple and straightforward as it gets, and we don't think workers should lose their jobs by accessing employment leave that is provided and covered for them by the federal government. That's what happened in this instance. We initiated it because we weren't asked. Then when we were asked, we said, we've told you already, this is what our recommendation is, please implement and act on it. And it not only did it fall on deaf ears, but it seems to continually to be some sort of delay for a consultation with whom, I'm not sure. When they were the government of the day, they didn't ask anyone else, they only asked LMRC. LMRC gave them advice, and they chose to ignore it and delay it yet again. Thank you.
Do other members of the committee have questions for the presenter? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Kevin, for your presentation. Okay, just to be clear for everyone, on Bill 9, we do have an out-of-town and out-of-province presenter, but they are on Zoom. That's Mr. Patrick Tohill. So we're going to actually go back to Bill 7, and I'd like to call Ms. Tanya Paulson to present. Tanya Paulson, please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Paulson. I'm the Executive Director for the Manitoba Building Trades Council, and here's a representative of the Allied Hydro Council of Manitoba as well. Manitoba Building Trades has 13 affiliated construction unions representing skilled trades workers across our province. And I'm pleased to be here on behalf of those members to speak in favor of Bill 7, which will repeal the ban on project labor agreements, or PLAs. When the ban was put in place under the Brian Pallister government, it was done so in a direct and targeted effort to harm building trades unions. But the reality is, it has harmed our provincial construction industry labor pool as a whole. This ban is the only one of its kind in North America and has had devastating impacts on workforce development, labor cost certainty, and employment standard enforcement on provincial infrastructure projects. PLAs are a very common tool in construction and are regularly used by both public and private entities to ensure cost certainty for project owners, while also maximizing those training opportunities, local hiring opportunities, and ensuring uniform employment standards on job sites. Many of the largest infrastructure projects in Manitoba's history, critical infrastructure that Manitobans rely on and use every day, mind you, were built under a project labor agreement. Manitoba Hydro itself had the longest project labor agreement in Canada's history. Until it expired in 2023 under the previous government, the Birtwood-Nelson Agreement, in partnership with the Allied Hydro Council in Manitoba, successfully employed tens of thousands of Manitobans on major hydro installations. These projects have placed Manitoba as a leading producer of clean, renewable energy and included many generating stations, including most recently the Kiosk generating station. PLAs have also been integral in delivering on those large earth-moving projects beyond hydro, like the floodway expansion, which was not only completed early, but also on budget. PLAs are time-tested and provenly effective policy enforcement tools for ensuring priority of local hiring and diversity hiring targets, providing apprenticeship and training opportunities and workforce development oversight planning, providing all workers with collective agreement rates and industry-leading benefits, ensuring cost certainty for government, and stabilizing access to skilled trades labor. Further, the province, as the project owner, was guaranteed access to labor supply and standardized dispute resolution mechanisms so that no strikes, lockouts, or shortage of skilled labor would prevent work from being completed on time and on budget. These agreements provide taxpayer-funded projects, all of these benefits and more, and Manitobans deserve to know that their tax dollars are used efficiently and are benefiting our communities and our workers. Some of you might have heard, and as a phrase in favor on the opposition, that PLAs are forced unionization, or that they limit the number of contractors who can bid on a project. I'm pleased to inform you that these statements are categorically untrue. If you don't believe me, you could ask the Supreme Court. They refused to hear merit contractors' forced unionization claims case, which was the impetus for this ridiculous ban in the first place. In Manitoba's long history of successfully using PLAs to employ and train Manitobans, there has been no rapid increase in non-union contractors being organized. In fact, I challenge you to find a case of any contractor who has been forced to unionize during or after performing work under a Manitoba project labor agreement. And why is this? Because PLAs have always prioritized labor stability for projects. The Birtwin-Nelson Agreement specifically restricted the union's right to organize a contractor on a PLA project. Other PLAs have gone further, including a cooling off period where the unions relinquish the right to organize those contractors for a set number of years after a project has concluded. Workers under a PLA are not required to stay within the union in any capacity. During a PLA project, all workers receive equal prevailing union wages and benefits that are industry leading and further support our healthy Manitoba tax base. They receive representation ensuring that they are treated fairly with good and safe working conditions. PLAs support open and fair tendering so that high quality contractors are not forced to work down to a lowest cost bid model. The lowest cost model puts our local construction industry at risk from bad industry actors moving in and being awarded our publicly owned projects with subpar workers from out of province. And it's happening every single day right now. The evaluation of bids should be based on quality and expertise and not based on who can pay their skilled workforce the least. Large infrastructure projects built without a PLA continue to give Manitoba taxpayers the most grief. For example, the South End Water Pollution Control Centre was built on a lowest cost bid. What that meant in reality is at the time when hundreds of Manitoba construction workers were coming out of work because kiosk has wound down, the cornerstone piece of infrastructure in Winnipeg was being built by out-of-province workers. Insult to injury is that the work was so poor in quality that much of it continues to be redone. It is years behind on schedule and hundreds of thousands of dollars over budget. Had the project been tendered with a project labor agreement, the jobs would have been local, the work would have been higher quality, and taxpayers would not be paying for preventable cost overruns. I want to circle back to the point that I made at the beginning. I stated that the ban on project labor agreements was harmful not only to building trade unions, but to the industry as a whole. That is because PLAs are critical for ensuring Manitoba's workers have the opportunity to develop their skills on a Manitoba job site. When we know Manitoban workers have the job, we can facilitate, we as in the unions, we facilitate wraparound supports that retain the workers and that help them navigate their training, that advance their apprenticeship, that get them that Red Seal job. So when that job winds down, as every construction job does, they're ready to go into the next one in a highly qualified position. This is how we train the next generation and grow our labor pool in a critical skill shortage. Manitoba Building Trades is thrilled to see that this government has moved so fast on this, that the Bill 7 will repeal the ban on PLAs. We know that this government wants to create good jobs for the Manitobans who built the infrastructure we rely on every day, and this is an important first step. The only real way to reverse the negative impacts the ban on PLAs had on local jobs, project quality, and training opportunities for Manitoba is to legislate a prescriptive framework going forward. This way, Manitobans can know that their tax dollars are supporting fair and open tendering on our province's major infrastructure projects. So for the good of my members, for all construction workers, and the industry labor pool as a whole, I hope we can count on your support for this bill, regardless of partisan stripe. And I thank you for the opportunity to present today. And I've been working on this file. I started at the building trades in 2018. That was not a great year for PLAs in our province. And so I'm really keen to take any questions that you have today. And thank you again for letting me come and present.
Thank you very much. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Ms. Paulson, for joining us today and for your continued advocacy and leadership for the 13 construction unions that you represent. My question is in regards to our skilled labor shortages that we currently have. Let's say our government wants to, have a project and we really want to prioritize this project. This is very important for Manitobans to get this project done. How does a PLA help get that labor that we already have this shortage for to get to that project and make sure that becomes a priority and it gets delivered?
Tanya Paulson.
A couple of factors, one being where, workers will follow where the money and the work is. The province is the major employer of ICI infrastructure in the province. Paying unionized prevailing wages and benefits is a great start to attract workers to a project. Beyond that, the coordination and foresight that comes when you know a project's going to be a project labor agreement, that's when you work with on a project management agreement with the building trades unions, and we source that labor. We're a labor supply sourcer for these major projects, and we work on a labor supply model together.
Do other members of the committee have questions? Ms. Byram?
Just a comment, Ms. Paulson, thank you for taking time out of your evening and presenting your, making your presentation here tonight. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, Ms. Paulson? Other questions? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Ms. Paulson, I'm wondering about what a PLA actually entails, like for you as the person that would be negotiating it. Like, how complicated is this? We've heard Mr. Rebeck talk about how there could be thousands of workers, tens of different types of trades or more, and then all the different working conditions and set conditions. Like, how complicated is this?
Ms. Paulson.
Any major project, and this is why it's used by both public and private, it's complicated to staff up. There's dozens, if not, like 50 different plus occupations on a single project, especially in a lot of these major projects. These are rural and remote projects when we're talking about hydro dams. A project labor agreement is essentially, as Mr. Rebeck said, is a pre-hire collective agreement. The Burntwood-Nelson Agreement is in existence since the 1960s and just defaulted in 2023. That's, a 100-plus page document. But I would err on the side of it is complicated to staff up a project, doing it without a prescriptive framework, without a legal framework, without site representatives and union representatives on site, and a single mandate, a single wage schedule, rules, regulations, dispute resolutions, lock, strikeout, bans. It's complicated, for sure, but staffing up a large project is complicated. So I can't imagine doing one, and we've seen the faults that happen when you do one without it. And so it is it's an extensive labor relations exercise, but doing a $1 billion+ project without one is fairly unheard of and unadvisable.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the presenter? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your time. I'll now call on Mr. Mark Lafond. Mr. Mark Lafond, please proceed with your presentation.
Good evening, honorable ministers. My name is Mark Lafond. I'm the business manager of the Operating Engineers, Local 987. We represent crane operators, stationary engineers, maintenance workers, heavy equipment operators, and pipeliners, just to name a few. Our organization is 1,300 people strong, and I'm pleased to be given an opportunity to speak on Bill 7 on the repealing of the project labor agreements. When the ban on project labor agreements was proposed in 2018, it's my belief that it was an ideological decision. The government of the day could have easily chosen not to participate in them, but instead they chose to ban it. This was the first piece of legislation that I'm aware of that was passed in North America. Project labor agreements are pre-hiring agreements covering all crafts, large to medium-sized construction projects, and establish terms and conditions for employment. The main purpose of PLAs is to promote predictability, coordination, efficiencies on projects. Construction projects are highly skilled, labor-intensive industries. The success of the construction project requires significant coordination amongst various contractors and dependable, qualified workforce that are trained on specific crafts. A PLA is a management tool that institutes uniform work and harmonizes work to improve productivity, provides access and tools to skilled labor, and reduces chances of labor shortages. PLAs can produce positive outcomes. Many of them include apprenticeships, individuals hired under represented groups, and prioritize local hiring. A PLA establishes protocols for resolving labor disputes without resorting to strikes and lockouts. PLAs typically include provisions that ban strikes and lockouts. Project labor agreements increase investments in registered apprenticeships and reduce on-the-job accidents and injuries. PLAs were initially concentrated around large, complex, very long, and often rural projects. However, in the 1990s, when the industry experienced a boom with low unemployment, construction users demanded more skilled workers. PLAs emerged as a tool to providing users of PLAs with undisrupted labor supply of qualified craft workers and for expanding registered apprenticeship programs that invest in training. Now, project labor agreements are used around the world on all projects, not just large ones. Non-union contractors could choose to bid on projects where PLAs are required. Non-union contractors who choose to bid on PLAs do not become union either during the project or after the project. Workers covered under PLAs sometimes have to join a union to participate in that project. However, in other instances, they don't. They pay agency fees called RAND, so they're not union members. And the RAND formula is based upon paying fair dues to the union in order to represent those non-union workers, or union workers for that matter, in the administration of that collective agreement. Union contractors invest in job quality and worker training. Survey data of the Associated General Contractors of America, AGC, include representatives of 1,800 union contractors and 3,900 non-union contractors. And the survey revealed that labor shortages are much less severe in union segment of the industry. Union contractors are 21% less likely to experience delays in project completion, 27% less likely to report that their local pipeline supply of well-trained craft workers is poor, and 13% less likely to lose their workers to other industries. Project labor agreements have been applied in public projects since the 1930s, consistently around the world. PLAs in the public sector have been used on schools, road construction, affordable housing, hydro, and building projects. Many examples of successful PLAs have been used right here in this province. Flin Flon, the Fleur Project, Pine Falls, the Tembec Project, Minnedosa, the Husky Project, Kiosk, Eastside Road, Enbridge Line 3 replacement, a pipeline project, and the list goes on and on. Project labor agreements also have a long history in the private sector. Corporations around the world like Apple, Intel, Honda, General Motors, BP, Procter & Gamble, Walmart, Disney, all use project labor agreements. So I guess the question is, if they use it, why don't we? Project agreements are a de-risking mechanism. At the same time, PLAs ensure market competitive wages and benefits, skilled workforce, uninterrupted supply of labor, safety standards, robust workforce development commitments that create real pathways and timely completion of critical infrastructure on budget and on time. OA 987 is pleased by this government's commitment for repealing the ban. As responsible stewards, you are ensuring that infrastructure projects get the best bang for the buck. You are ensuring that Manitobans are offered work on the Manitoba projects, and that those projects provide provisions for safe working conditions, good wages and benefits, and opportunities for all people. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Lafond, for coming here and letting us know about how your organization feels about how important PLAs have been to you, to your work. Can you please speak a little bit about how the ban affected your members?
Mr. Lafond.
Thank you for the question. Well, I mean, it did have material impact to our organization because, like one of the previous speakers spoke about, I mean, Kiosk came offline, and we have a work board, an outer work board, so people get dispatched out to projects. And currently, in one of our divisions, not so much in the other divisions, but there's still a couple hundred people on the outer work list. So those people are waiting. They're phoning me all the time. They're hoping that projects come on stream. They're hoping that project labor agreements come back so that they can go to work. So there is a material impact, yep.
Thank you. Do other members of the committee have questions? All right. Thank you very much for your time. I will now call on Mr. Victor Da Silva. Mr. Da Silva, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Da Silva. I'm the business manager and secretary-treasurer of LiUNA Local 1258. I represent construction craft workers, concrete finishers, mason tenders, and laborers in many different sectors in the construction industry. And I am here to speak in favor of Bill 7, the repeal of the ban of the project labor agreements, also known as PLAs. You'll hear from those who oppose this bill that PLAs are forced unionization, or it drives up the cost of projects. But there's no evidence of any employer being unionized while working under a PLA here in Manitoba. The term forced unionization is nothing more than a dog whistle for, we don't want to be forced to pay benefits. We don't want to be forced to contribute to workers' pensions. We don't want to be forced to be held accountable for working conditions. We don't want to be forced to hire local workers first. There have been many projects built in Manitoba that were covered by PLAs, such as the Husky Ethanol Plant in Minnedosa, the Floodway Expansion, Kiosk, Wisquatam, the East Side Road, and Bipole 3, just to name a few. And yet, no employers were unionized while working on those projects. PLAs did do is provide owners with the project that will secure labor cost for the duration of that project. Unlike major cost overruns that took place at the South End Water Pollution Control Project and at the Winnipeg Police Station in downtown Winnipeg, and now, from my understanding, at the North End Water Pollution Control Station, project labor agreements provide owners with the security that their projects will be built at a higher quality. That is because cheap labor is no longer the deciding factor on who gets awarded the projects. With PLAs, one of the largest factors in securing the project is the contractor's ability to do the work efficiently with their highly skilled workforce and their management and ability to do that project. This provides a higher quality product for the client. PLAs also provide owners with the labor security so that their projects will be completed on time. With language in most PLAs that state there shall be no strikes or lockouts for the life of the PLA, we have all witnessed how labor unrest can affect productivity and the economy here in Manitoba. What PLAs also provide is an opportunity for Manitobans to work in their own province. PLAs often have hiring structure that outlines and obligates the hiring local residents prior to seeking employees from other province, or even worse, cheap temporary foreign workers who are often taken advantage of. This is a huge economic benefit to the province, as dollars earned in Manitoba stay in Manitoba. These hiring provisions often provide career opportunities for many individuals in underrepresented groups by providing them with safety training, skill development, and pathways to apprenticeship, which give them a career in the trades. So what are we actually talking about here? We're talking about individuals who want to go to work and provide for their families in one of the most dangerous and physically demanding professions there is. It is our responsibility to make sure that these hardworking tradespeople who build our vital infrastructure are cared for and in a manner that they deserve, and PLAs do that. In conclusion, PLAs are not just beneficial for Manitoba's economy and the owners of these projects who will end up with a top quality product upon completion. It benefits hardworking people of Manitoba, and anyone who opposes this bill only cares about their own interest and not what is best for Manitoba. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Silva, for coming here and presenting. I understand that LIUNA has a lot of members that are newcomers and other types of vulnerable workers. Could you maybe speak a little bit about, in your opinion, how a PLA would protect the rights of workers like this?
Mr. De Silva.
Yes, thank you. We do represent a lot of newcomers here to Canada. The labor trade is a very entry-level trade, so a lot of individuals come into this. But with the trade itself is a Red Seal apprenticeship trade, which gives them a great opportunity to go and get their skill sets, go through apprenticeship, and now make it into a career, where now they can now make a good livable wage, provide for their family, and it's a great opportunity for new Canadians. PLAs always have structures that talk about apprenticeships, and that is vital.
Thank you. Do other members of the committee have questions? Ms. Byram?
Again, thank you, Mr. De Silva, for coming and making your presentation and sharing your insight to your organization, and appreciate your time and sharing your story. Thank you.
Are there other questions for the presenter? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I will now call on Mr. Sean Ramsey. Mr. Ramsey, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sean Ramsey. I'm a Red Seal carpenter, and I hold my vocational teacher education diploma. I am here to speak in favor of Bill 7, which will repeal the ban on project labor agreements. Historically, these agreements have been supported by both Conservative and New Democratic parties in the province of Manitoba. In fact, former Conservative Premier Duff Roblin brought in project labor agreements to illustrate that reputable contractors with a highly trained and skilled workforce were paramount to having critical infrastructure projects being completed. This was a value for dollar spent philosophy. Project labor agreements offer many things: standardized wages, benefits, overtime schedules, equity hiring provisions, training, and local hiring provisions, among other things. I would like to speak to you from a perspective of training. As a certified tradesperson and a vocational teacher, my journey allowed me to teach on several First Nation communities in Manitoba. I saw firsthand how many of the projects on these communities failed to employ community residents in any meaningful way. Some would secure jobs, but my experience didn't show me the advancement and career opportunities that an apprenticeship would provide existed at any great degree. It is the advancement of career opportunities through programs like apprenticeships that benefit hardworking Manitobans across the province. This allows them to increase their economic well-being for themselves and for their families. The economic well-being includes for the present by way of a living wage, and in the future by advancement in the trade and contributing to well-managed pensions. The projects in northern Manitoba, such as Kiask, Kiwetinook, and Wasquatum, offered significant training opportunities for First Nation people and Manitoba residents because of provisions in the PLA which govern those projects. The failure to offer careers as an apprentice are not unique to northern Manitoba and First Nation communities in my experience. I worked as an apprenticeship training coordinator for Apprenticeship Manitoba in the early 2000s. I recall many similar conversations where people were working in the trade, but their employer would not offer them an apprenticeship. The promise of the apprenticeship was there after a probationary period, but all too often, the apprenticeship never materialized. Throughout my training career, I encouraged tradespeople I came to know to expand their experience and get employed with companies that would invest in them by entering into an apprenticeship agreement. The opportunity to do this is the very thing that many projects under a PLA offer. It mitigates labor being treated as a disposable resource. When a Manitoba tradesperson is working on a project, they are investing in the company. In turn, this company is creating wealth for itself and the client that owns the finished product. Agreements like PLAs create mechanisms to ensure the wealth building is a reciprocal agreement where the contractor invests in workers by way of apprenticeship agreements. If the Manitoba government is investing in a project, they too are contributing to the wealth of the company and the client. I don't believe it's an unrealistic ask to have a PLA to ensure there is, among other things, an assurance that there is an investment in hard-working Manitobans' careers through apprenticeship opportunities. The avenue for apprenticeship is key in my opinion. Many of the trades in Manitoba are voluntary to participate in. As such, there is no onus on the company to invest in training the worker through an apprenticeship and ultimately securing their red seal. An investment in these workers is in the best interest of the province, as it will develop a highly trained, highly skilled workforce. Having a PLA can ensure that investment in a project sees a return on investment by the way of the training it provides to Manitobans who go on to have successful careers in the trades. The shortage of skilled tradespeople in Manitoba and in Canada is well documented. The ability to address this through the use of PLAs is one strategy that is needed to increase the number of Manitobans entering the trades and becoming trained in them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey, for coming today to present. I have a question. I just don't really know too much about this topic. Why wouldn't an employer want to take on an apprentice?
Mr. Ramsey.
I don't know that I can speak for all employers as to why they wouldn't, but some of the reasons that I've heard is obviously there is a a graduation in wages as they become more skilled and advance through their levels. So while you may pay someone who is an unskilled laborer, $17 an hour, not classify them as an apprentice, and you can keep that person working at that wage for, 2, 3, 4 years. Once you sign the apprenticeship agreement, there are legislated mechanisms to ensure that once the apprentice completes training plus on-the-job experience, their wage goes up. So each level, their wage is going to go up. So where you could keep an apprentice, where you could keep an unskilled worker at, and I'm just picking an arbitrary figure, $17 an hour for 3 years, if that same person is an apprentice, then by the time they complete their 3rd year, their wage could be somewhere around $24, $25, $26 an hour.
Thank you. Do other members of the committee have questions? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey, for taking the time to present tonight. We're hearing a lot about the apprenticeship, and I'm just wanting to ask, is there enough journey persons there to take on the one-to-one ratio, and what does that look like?
Mr. Ramsey?
So again, I don't work for Apprenticeship Manitoba, so I don't know. My experience would tell me yes, there is, because there are other mechanisms within apprenticeship regulation that it's not just the journey persons that the company can rely on. There is something called designated trainers, and the designated trainer designation is that if an employer has someone that meets the skill set of a journey person, they too could train. So there are avenues, and there are still ratio adjustments. When I was an apprenticeship coordinator, just to expand a little bit, if we had a site that was, say, a residential site in northern Manitoba or rural Manitoba, they could apply for a ratio adjustment, and it would probably most likely be granted, because really the oversight of the 2 apprentices is not too much to ask. On bigger projects, that becomes a little bit more tricky. So I think the short answer is I think there are enough journey persons and enough mechanisms in place to address that.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the presenter? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your time. Our next presenter is virtual. I'm going to be calling for Mr. Nicholas Adams. Mr. Adams, if you are ready. Oh, there we go. If you could just make sure your audio is on as well, then that would be great. And you can begin your presentation when you're ready.
Okay, excellent. I just wanted to keep my remarks brief and just quick introduction. So I'm Nicholas Adams. I am from Winnipeg originally. I grew up in Ottawa, and I've worked in the construction industry, primarily private, going through to pay through school, college, and university. When I got married in 2013, I started looking for things that could be a career building that I could build a family on. So having grown up involved in the construction industry in Winnipeg, I knew that a PLA had been agreed to for the Kiosk Hydro Dam, working under the long-standing Burtwood-Nelson agreement. I knew that would start my way to be able to build a family by starting a pension that a lot of people in their 30s and early 40s didn't really think of as commonplace as we were getting out of university, unless you worked in the public sector. So knowing that was going to happen, I took the leap to move myself and my wife back to Winnipeg, back home. I still had quite a bit of family there, so I had a a structure that I could build around. The only thing was missing was a career. So when 2016 rolled around and the very first concrete crews were being called up to Kiosk, as a Manitoban, I was able to get in on a stage hire and start with they had the JRS. So you were able to put your skill sets, your work history, everything was done for you through that government support that essentially was able to sign you up and find you a placement working on a Manitoba project. As a Manitoban, as well as an out-of-province hire and a local hire. So I did that. I was set up with the company, did all of the onboarding with my defined and set out skill sets. Once I got there, I was told which section of the hydro dam I would work in, and immediately started doing the training about the areas that we were working in, the Indigenous groups that we were doing this project in. From that first day of training, of onboarding, I realized that this was going to be a different kind of job from my private sector jobs, where it was just fly by the seat of your pants. Safety is kind of secondary, and your feelings and whether it be mental health or physical health is kind of secondary to the things that need to be the things that need to happen, the deadlines that need to be followed, and really at the whim of the benevolence of your supervisors. So leading me into my first weeks there, being away from home was really hard. You had your schedules or 21 days in a row, 7 days off. There was an adjustment there, but what helped in the adjustment is that I knew that by the time I was off of my first turnaround, I now had an active benefit plan. I can go and get glasses, go to the dentist, all of those things, as well as my spouse. So immediately that's something that I didn't have prior to that in private construction. That was just something new. That was just an added. It also included training, so that when I was off on my days, I could get training at the local union hall, which was the laborers, local 1258. I could get my training at the local labor hall, and I could go back with a new certification, as well as know that I would have that certification when this project ended, when it would end. So it would aid into my growth as someone in construction, organized or not. Within the first year of me working on the Kiosk Hydro Dam, we were able to purchase our first home. Sorry, I get a bit emotional because it's a lot. It's a big reason where I am today. We were able to confidently choose to build our family and have our first child, 2016. I continued to work on that hydro dam, realizing the value of being a part of an organized labor family, regardless of the trade. Encouraged me to get involved and to help people the way that I felt like I'd been helped and supported. So I became a shop steward on that project. That led me into the relations that the workers, management, site supervision have, which when you have the structure that you have in a PLA, becomes quite fluid and becomes an actual relationship. There's give and take, there's understanding, there's guidelines that everybody needs to follow, and there's a lot less of the back and forth. There's no play on am I friends with my superintendent? Am I not? It's just based on your merits as a worker. And then that experience then led me into a continued career in organized labor and the construction industry. And I'm very thankful, and I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't have two beautiful daughters now if it wasn't for that project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? The Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Thanks, Nicholas Adams. I just wanted to comment that I wanted to thank you for sharing your complete story in depth. It really illustrates how transformative a PLA can be just for one person and one family. So thanks for sharing that with us in our committee today.
Mr. Adams, would you like to respond?
Thank you very much. I didn't want it to drag on, but the impact cannot be emphasized enough. That my story is unique to me, but is not unique to the grand scheme of the effect that working on that project under that framework has done to myself, my other friends in the industry. You know, it was hard. You didn't go through people like you went in my private experience, and the majority of the people that did move on chose to move on to other projects across the country done under similar framework and agreements. And that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.
Are there other questions for the presenter? Ms. Byram?
Thank you, Mr. Adams. It looks like you've got a busy night here. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to zoom in and make your presentation. I appreciate your story and taking the time, like I said, to share that with us here tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Adams, would you like to respond?
I would just like to thank Ms. Byram as well for taking the time to listen to my remarks.
Are there other questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Schmidt.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Adams. I can appreciate how the dignity of work and union membership has changed your life. I thank you for sharing that. And becoming a union member certainly shaped my life as well and was the reason that I'm here today also. But you did mention, my question is that you mentioned some health and safety concerns that you experienced when working outside of a project labor agreement. Just this week or last week in debate, the opposition critic for this portfolio disagreed and said, and I quote, "creating false fears and statements regarding the safety of workers when we know that this bill is only designed to funnel money into the pockets of union leaders. This only inflates costs on the backs of every taxpayer here in Manitoba. These projects will escalate due to the unrequired, fictitious, bogus union cash grab." I was just wondering if you had any comments about that.
Mr. Adams?
In my so essentially the question is, if I experienced any negative things coming from my union as a member, in terms of finances, big union boss, and all of that. Lore, is that my understanding? In regards to the specific statement you made?
Honourable Minister Schmidt, can you clarify?
Yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are and whether or not you believe that these health and safety, concerns are real or are they fictitious? And what impact experience would a project labor agreement have on health and safety concerns in the workplace?
Mr. Adams?
Okay, sorry, I do understand. Even on the Kiosk Hydro Dam, with the amazing safety record they had, we had fatalities on that project. And they were dealt with care, compassion, and results in terms of what safety protocols need to be changed, what could have happened, what could have been done to not have it again. And when you look on the private side, and you've got, in British Columbia, there were cranes falling down on construction sites, whether they be under a PLA or not. Those safety things get overlooked by those companies because it's a bottom line issue. The bottom line issue for companies that work successively and willingly under PLAs, whether they be unionized companies or not, what makes them the profit is the workforce. A healthy, safe workforce is an efficient workforce. They don't break equipment. They aren't on sites that have fatalities. I worked in the private road building industry in Winnipeg while I was going to university, and there were times where I was almost hit by cars. And it was simple because we decided to work later, work longer, and with less safety precautions. That's what I'll say to that. I hope I've answered it effectively.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the time tonight. I will now call on Mr. Kyle Kalsix. Mr. Kyle Kalsix, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Hello, my name is Kyle Kalsix. I'm the business manager of UA Local 254. I have a membership consisting of approximately 1,400 members. The work we do in the industry is inclusive of industrial, commercial, institutional, as well as the pipeline industry. I come before you today to present my members' perspective on Bill 7, which will repeal the ban on project labor agreements. To my knowledge, the ban is the only one of its kind in North America and has had a devastating impact to workforce development, cost certainty, infrastructure, and safe working conditions on projects. PLAs ensure competitive bidding, resulting in fairness for workers in the industry. Using a PLA is a way to include structured training and provide opportunities for advancement in apprenticeship. Additionally, job sites under PLAs have safer working conditions. These are just some of the positive outcomes of PLAs, all the while providing an efficient job site. When workers, including the membership of UA Local 254, have worked on projects tendered using PLAs, such as Wisquatam, Kiosk, and the Floodway, the results were more inclusivity for underrepresented groups and apprenticeship advancement. These opportunities correlate to a larger workforce, which ensures that Manitoba is training the workforce we need to build the infrastructure we need tomorrow, today. The opportunities these projects presented came from a long-standing PLA with Hydro known as the Burntwood Nelson Agreement, or the BNA. Without the BNA, the workforce development we achieved as a province would not have been possible. As a whole, the country grapples with forecasts of skilled workforce shortage. It is imperative that here in Manitoba, we train Manitobans and retain our workforce. One of the easiest things the province can do to ensure we do not fall even farther behind is to go back to the basics. Manitoba's history is rich with examples of past PLAs that provided a framework for training and advancement in apprenticeship. As we look to offer opportunities for economic reconciliation in Northern and Indigenous communities, PLAs are a tool that can be maximized with wraparound supports and flexible training delivery. Without PLAs, many local jobs for Manitoba's skilled trades workers would not exist. That is because a PLA can be prescriptive in the sequence of labor procurement, which means they can ensure that Manitoba workers get to work first. An example of a job where a PLA would have been beneficial for ensuring local work is the South End Water Pollution Control Center. That project was full of out-of-province workers, not to mention extremely over budget. Timeframes obviously not met, and shamefully, the project has not yet to be completed, to my knowledge. In the same vein, the North End Water Pollution Control Center is another major infrastructure project that is a missed opportunity for our community, has failed at local hiring workers, and is leaving minority groups trying to break cycles of unemployment behind. You will most likely hear today that the repeal of this ban will be forced unionization. This is not the case. In Manitoba's tradition of using PLAs to complete projects on time and on budget, there has not been a massive influx of unionization of previously open shop contractors. PLAs have been around since the 1960s and were created by the PC government. PLAs have time and time again ensured the best quality infrastructure projects for Manitobans while saving taxpayer dollars. Manitoba projects should benefit Manitobans. PLAs make sure that the investments made into Manitoba benefit Manitobans first and foremost. I want to re-emphasize, PLAs are not forced unionization. Any of the companies on job sites with labor procurement done under a PLA did not experience a wave of unionization. In fact, on the floodway, there was a clause that prevented unions on site from organizing the companies that were not already unionized for a time-specified cooling-off period. Without PLAs, there has been no guarantee for local jobs, construction quality, or project safety. PLAs guarantee the same standards of safety and oversight for everybody working on a construction site. Without PLAs, workers are left vulnerable to accidents and serious injuries, and projects are left open to delays. Resentment, mistrust, and high worker turnover are also the result. I want to reiterate my support and my members' support for Bill 7, which will repeal the ban on project labor agreements. We know this government wants to create good jobs for Manitobans who build the infrastructure we rely on every day. This is an important first step, but the only way to reverse the negative impacts on the ban of PLAs had on local jobs, project quality and training opportunities in Manitoba is to legislate a prescriptive framework going forward for the good of the industry, which includes my members. I hope I can count on support for this regardless of partisan stripes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thanks, Mr. Kyle Kalsix, for your presentation, for being here today to give us more information for the committee for our consideration. Could you please try to tell me a little bit more about the process, like at the north end or at the south end pollution control centers when they were trying to build that it was an out-of-province conglomerate that got the job, and then they started bringing in their own workers from other provinces. What happened to the Manitoba workers, and why wouldn't they try to hire folks in Manitoba?
Mr. Kalsix.
The why is an unknown. Anybody who drove by any of those projects at any point in time, you saw the multitude of out-of-province plates. The concept of having these companies outside of our province, it's not only the workers that are here, it's the payroll staffs, it's the management team, all this funding going back to the province where they live, failing Manitoba for taxpayer dollars as well as members and the general public working on these projects, putting money back into Manitoba, hence for Manitobans.
Do other members of the committee have questions? Ms. Byram?
Thank you, Mr. Kalsix. Kalsix, thank you for taking the time and making your presentation here tonight.
Are there further questions for the presenter? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for making the time. I would now call on Mr. Sean Wood. Okay, we're going to move Mr. Sean Wood to the bottom of the list. He was signed up to be online, but he's not on at the moment. Can I call on David Grant? David Grant will drop to the bottom of the list. Can I call on Mr. Paul Moist? Mr. Moist, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable ministers, members of the committee. I'm pleased to speak to you today as president of the Manitoba Federation of Union Retirees. We are retired workers, unionized workers, and we're the Manitoba affiliate of the 300,000 member Congress of Union Retirees of Canada. I just want to say at the outset what a privilege it is to sit here and listen to particularly rank and file workers coming before their government to speak on worker issues. It's really why we're all here. I speak today in favor of Bill 7 and the restoration of PLAs for public sector capital projects. We support the positions of both the Federation of Labor and the Manitoba Building Trades on Bill 7. In 2021, I appeared in front of this legislative committee to speak against Bill 13, which ended PLAs, as we've heard tonight. And many of the arguments advanced in that presentation remain relevant tonight as we restore PLAs, beginning with project labor agreements having existed for over 50 years here in our province prior to their repeal. We reject the argument of groups like the merit contractors who talk of forced unionization, which you've heard a lot about tonight. And like others, I note that the Supreme Court of Canada rejected their arguments by refusing to hear their legal challenge in 2012. Back in 2021, before this committee, I commended to committee members an article by Manitoba author Doug Smith called Labor Conflict at Hydroelectric Generating Stations, published in the Manitoba History magazine, fall of 2017, where Mr. Smith outlined the history of PLAs coming into place and talked about the Grand Rapids project. 1961, construction began. A member of this legislature, the late David Orlico, who was an MLA and went on to become a member of Parliament, traveled north and then reported back as an opposition MLA to the legislature on the deplorable working conditions and workers actually starving on the job site in Grand Rapids because they weren't being paid very much. This convinced the government of that day, Mr. Roblin, to bring project labor agreements into being. Doug Smith said, if wage rates were fixed, contractors would be obliged to compete based on skill and ability rather than on their ability to cut wages. And the entire legislature agreed with those sentiments that Mr. Orlico put forward. Like many other jurisdictions, Manitoba faces skilled trade shortages and a shortfall in private sector apprenticeship opportunities. In restoring the use of PLAs, we urge government today to embrace the principles of fairness contained in the British Columbia-based CBAs, which includes legislatively maximizing apprenticeship opportunities on major public infrastructure projects, priority hiring and training for Indigenous peoples and other equity-seeking groups, including women. And finally, wage alignment to prevailing industry rates to promote good wages for all, wages able to support families. Those principles are at work in British Columbia today, and they can work here in our province. Building trades unions have invested millions across Canada and here in Manitoba in training facilities to prepare the skilled workforce of tomorrow. Of interest is the fact that many who oppose PLAs are not involved in training workers. Their only concern is the bottom line. And that bottom line mentality found its way into the published platform of the Progressive Conservative Party of Manitoba in 2016, when on this subject matter they said, shop smarter with government purchasing by reducing the number of untendered contracts and ending forced unionization of company employees in order to work on public contracts. PLAs don't force unionization on anyone. What they do is promote fairness and prevent a free ride for those who do not invest in trades, training, or in apprenticeships. So the Manitoba Federation of Union Retirees fully supports Bill 7 and its restoration here in Manitoba. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? I've been made aware that according to our current rules, government members who are not the minister sponsoring the bill need leave to ask a question. This is actually going to be changing at the beginning of the second session next month, but it's still in place now. So accordingly, is there leave for MLA Kennedy to ask a question?
Agreed.
Agreed. And so ordered. MLA Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Really, it's more of a comment. I would just like to put on the record that I appreciate Mr. Moist coming today to give us your presentation and the previous presenters that have come before. Thank you.
Mr. Moist, would you like to respond?
No, that's good.
Are there further questions? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Again, just thank you for coming and making your presentation, Mr. Moist, and taking the time out of your evening, and thank you.
Mr. Moist, would you like to respond to that?
No, that's good.
Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Moist, for coming and presenting. I always appreciate the historical perspectives that you bring when you do present to committee. I'm a little bit interested in what do you think was going on during this time when this ban happened? I think I was reading somewhere it was just a very set time, like 2016 to 2023, a lot of labor unrest, there was a lot of strikes, there was the wage freezes, there was all the Supreme Court challenges, and what was happening around this time that made this government want to go in this direction with this ban? Is this indicative of past Manitoba labor relations history in general? I know that for the NDP, we strive for labor peace whenever possible. What do you think about that particular part of time that the recent history that we just passed?
Mr. Moist.
Well, thank you for the question. I think that there was a propensity in this jurisdiction beginning in the mid-2010s and elsewhere that that labor was vulnerable and one could do what they wanted with them. And things have changed a little bit right now in terms of collective bargaining across North America and shortages and things like that. So I have appeared in front of committees here for more than 4 decades, and things have gone back and forth. What's new in the 2016 period was, for the first time in my recollection, Mr. Rebeck mentioned the Joint Committee of Labor and Management that reviews all legislation that touches on this committee, and joint recommendations, unanimous recommendations from that committee rejected by the previous government. That was unusual and very not the norm in our province. But things have gone back and forth in our province, and they will again in the future. And I think that trade union membership in Manitoba has been a positive thing in the public and private sector for all workers. And I think restoring, we'll speak later this month to the omnibus budget bill, which contains other important matters related to labor relations. But I think if you look across the country and across the world right now, I read a poll the other day that declared Republican supporters in the United States, just over 75% of them hope that their children can get a union job in a country with less than 6% of the private sector unionized. So if you can square that circle for me, I can't. But I want to say that historically, before this committee and all its iterations over the last decades, the trade union movement is coming here in a responsible fashion and is actually less ideological than the right in society, in my opinion. But I'm proud as a retired worker to continue to work alongside good organizations like the MFL, the Manitoba Building Trades, all of the building trades unions here today, and to say to each and every one of you that the people that work in Manitoba over the last 100-odd years are the people that built Manitoba.
Are there further questions for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much for making the time. Our next presenter is online. I would like to call Ms. Yvette Milner. If I could just call on Ms. Yvette Milner to accept the invitation to become a panelist. Ms. Yvette Milner, if you could turn your microphone on and your video. When you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate being here. It probably won't be a surprise that I disagree with a lot of what has been said, but I will start with my introduction. I'm Yvette Milner. I'm president of Merit Contractors Association of Manitoba, and I've been in that role since 2016. Our association is quite unique in that it's the only association in Manitoba that exclusively has a membership comprised of open shop contractors and their employees. And when I say open shop, meaning that you don't have to be a building trade, a part of a building trade union in order to work in a company. Although some of our companies do have parts of their companies that are unionized and some that are not. We've got 170 member companies representing about 6,000 employees and 10,000 people on our plan, our benefits plan. So contrary to what has been said today, some non-union companies actually provide a benefit plan and a pension. So, you know, we provide a very, very comprehensive plan that includes a lot of things that are focused on mental health, that are focused on health and benefits. And the members in our plan are very good employers. And I would say that there are good and bad employers in every kind of, whether they're unionized or not. And when I hear the comments, and I'm not sure who said it, might have been Mr. Reback, race to the bottom, the safety stuff. You know, I've sat on the labor board since 1999. You know, I think I was the youngest person appointed there, and I'm still there. And I've seen a lot of workplace health and safety issues that are with union and non-union companies. So the idea that for some reason a union workplace is better, to me, doesn't resonate. What else will I say here? We're not welcoming to newcomers. I think that's a bit silly, and that we don't provide training. You know, we've got a scholarship fund at Red River College. We provide tuition bursary programs or refunds. We very much support apprenticeship and women in the trades. So all of that kind of nonsense is nonsense. So I'll go on with my speaking notes. About 70% of the workforce in Canada construction, in Canada and in Manitoba, is open shop. And what Merit really strives to do is ensure that open shop contractors and their employees can work in their chosen trade without forced affiliation in a trade union. So I don't disagree with what's been said about having agreements on big projects, but I think you can build criteria into those projects, diversity, safety, all of those things without, and I disagree with the comments that have been made about it's not forced unionization. If people have made a choice to have a non-union company and they're forced to participate in the feeding the union, the perception is it's forced unionization. So what we advocate for is fairness and open tendering in support of the thousands of open shop contractors that are working along with the union contractors. And in our view, the repeal of Bill 7, although, again, I'm going to say I don't disagree with obviously having agreements on big projects, but it opens up the door for public sector projects to force the requirement for workers to be affiliated with a building trade union. And it's not just a union, it's a building trade union. And sometimes against their wishes. And we've heard from our members, they just would not bid on projects if one of the requirements was that they were to be forced to be a part of a building trade union. They made that choice. And I would say that there is evidence that shows, and I just read a very recent research from Cardis on the CBAs and PLAs in BC, that, you know, they can have benefits, but when you have less competition, there is an increased cost of doing business to the taxpayer. And I would not say that's a race to the bottom. Certainly I'm speaking for my members, not for the whole open shop community, but I'm guessing there's some bad union employers out there too. I'm not guessing that. So my understanding is that Bill 7's primary purpose is to promote transparency, accountability, and fairness in the procurement of construction services. And in my view, that means allowing everyone to compete on a fair playing field, and that's what merit is all about. It aids to economic benefits, and there's more competition. People aren't being discouraged from bidding on projects. And that's really why merit opposes this bill, or the repeal of the bill. And so I think that I don't think that all of us are far apart on wanting to ensure equity, wanting to show diversity, wanting to show local employment. But I'm not sure that a PLA that requires open shop companies to contribute to a building trade union is the answer. So our basic philosophy is open, fair, and transparent tendering based on achieving the best value at a good cost. And that doesn't mean a race to the bottom. And it should go without preference to non-union, non-affiliated unions or building trade union. It should just be open. And so we really think that just that fairness is really what we talk about as keystone. And I know I'm probably running out of time here. But I disagree with some of the comments that have been made in terms of project labor agreements on large public sector projects, you know, based on the feedback I have from our members who were back in the day. They did have to, and they already provide a good benefits package, pension, everything else. And so, and adhere to safety and health regulation. And I would say that British Columbia is a very good case in point right now. Like they're having a lot of problems, you know, with respect to 19 building trade unions. Everyone within 30 days has to sign up. And I know that's not a Manitoba example, but it's something that's going on. So just to close up here, we don't want anyone, whether it's union, non-union, you know, a non-affiliated union, to have a monopoly on government projects. I think that hurts workers. It hurts our companies for sure, and costs taxpayers. And it's just wrong in my opinion. And we believe in training. We support apprenticeship. We invest in training and apprenticeship. And yeah, I just think that it's got to be open and fair. And I'd just like to clarify that I think a few people have said that our the past, it was before my time, but that the court thing was thrown out of the Supreme Court. there were no merits heard on that case. It was just a jurisdictional issue where they needed it to be in the labor board. And so, there was misunderstanding there. But those are my comments and subject to questions. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Ms. Milner, for your presentation today. My question is, if this PLA ban were such a good idea and very necessary, why is it that we were the only jurisdiction in North America that had this?
Ms. Milner.
That's a good question, and I don't know that. I just think that there can be ways around this with criteria and agreements that don't require, and I think this is the, I know this is the feeling of my members, without having a building trades component to everything when they are the minority, really.
Thank you. Do other members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Ms. Byram?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you, Ms. Milner, for making your presentation tonight and taking time out of your evening. And it's nice to have a different perspective on this. And I'm just wondering, you made reference to a few points during your speech, but in particular, I want to ask more specifically in terms of safety. And if you can expand a little bit on what it is that some of the open shops might provide, or what they do to help with their employees in keeping them safe.
Ms. Milner?
Sorry, I'm glad you asked that question because I did jot down when someone made the comment that only unionized workplaces need to have a safety committee, which is ridiculous. The same safety legislation applies to all employers, and some are good and some are bad. And we have criteria that people have to comply with to be in our membership. We have kicked some people out. They comply with the same legislation. They've got safety committees, they've got safety talks, and I have seen one WSIB study on safety, which was of probably not construction, that said that unionized workplaces were better. And I'm not saying they're not better. I'm just saying that everybody has the same legislation that they have to comply with. And as I said, I've been on the labor board for a long time, and there's good and bad employers, whether it's safety or whether it's employment standards, whatever it is. But there is no race to the bottom because you're not unionized. And so the implication that somehow, because you're open shop, you're not a good employer, I just know with the 170 companies that I deal with, that's just not the case.
Thank you. Are there further questions for the presenter? Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Ms. Milner. I just wanted to try to add on to what you were saying earlier about the jurisdiction issue, which is why you said that it didn't go through the Supreme Court. Why was it that Merit did not agree to continue with the Manitoba Labour Board route with your forced unionization claims?
Ms. Milner?
When the government changed. And so we didn't think it was worth the legal fees. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Further questions? Ms. Byram?
Yes, question for you regarding the apprenticeship ratio, and is that, the recent changes to that, is that going to affect some of your membership?
Sorry, Ms. Milner?
Sorry. I think it's just based on informal discussions, but yeah, and I can't remember the name of one of the prior speakers, but you know, I think that it does have an impact on some of the smaller companies who don't want to, you know, more journey people.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the time tonight. I would now like to call Tyler Slobodian. All right. Tyler will go to the bottom of the list. Oh, oh, sorry, he's online. Okay. Tyler, you can start your presentation whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable ministers, and other members in attendance. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to put some words on record surrounding this bill and ultimately share our members' perspective and concerns about repealing this legislation. I'll start by providing a bit of a brief overview about CFIB, which is who I'm with, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. And we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization representing the interests of over nearly 100,000 businesses across Canada, and that includes close to 5,000 members in Manitoba, and many of these being contractors and subcontractors. Yeah, I'm here on behalf of my members in Manitoba who have explained their opposition to this bill and to why some small and medium-sized companies may not support these types of agreements in this legislation repeal. First and foremost is competition. You know, PLAs often require that all workers on a project be unionized, which can severely limit the pool of available labor. For small and medium-sized businesses, this can be a significant disadvantage. Many of these companies rely on a mix of union and non-union workers to stay competitive. By mandating union-only labor, PLAs effectively shut out a portion of the workforce and create an uneven playing field. This not only stifles competition, but can lead to higher project costs as well. We also must consider the financial implications. Small and medium-sized companies typically operate with very tight budgets and fewer resources than larger firms. PLAs often impose strict wage scales and benefits that can significantly increase costs. Obviously, we believe everybody is entitled to fair wages and benefits and so on. But for smaller companies, these added expenses can often make it difficult to bid competitively on contracts. Small businesses will find themselves forced to raise their prices even further, which could drive clients to seek more affordable options elsewhere. This could jeopardize the viability of these businesses and lead to fewer opportunities for growth as well. Project delays could also be a major issue. When projects are delayed, costs can escalate due to extended timelines, potential penalties, and increased overhead. As a result, what initially seemed like a manageable project can quickly spiral into a costly endeavor, jeopardizing the financial stability of smaller contractors, leading to significant budget overruns. Another major concern for small businesses is the administrative burden. These agreements often come with complex requirements and regulations that can be overwhelming for smaller firms. Navigating the intricacies of compliance can consume valuable time and resources, which many small business owners don't have that. Instead of focusing on project execution and client satisfaction, small businesses may find themselves buried in paperwork and bureaucratic processes. This diversion of focus can stifle innovation and slow down progress, ultimately hindering the overall effectiveness of the project. The potential for skilled labor shortages should also not be overlooked. PLAs can limit hiring flexibility as they often dictate that contractors must employ workers from specific unions. If small or medium-sized companies are unable to hire the right talent for a project due to these restrictions, it could lead to delays and compromised quality. When businesses are unable to assemble the best teams, the outcome of the project can suffer, affecting not only just the company, but the clients and the overall community. Additionally, let's consider the broader economic impact on local economies. Small and medium-sized businesses are often the lifeblood of their communities, providing jobs and supporting local initiatives. By favoring PLAs, we may inadvertently undermine the very companies that contribute to economic growth and community well-being. A thriving small business sector helps to create a diverse economy, and we must be cautious not to enact policies that could stifle their growth. There's the issue of workforce diversity as well. Small and medium-sized businesses often employ a diverse range of workers, including non-union labor, which reflects the local population. PLAs may limit the diversity by enforcing a union-only workforce, potentially sidelining skilled workers who are not union members. While project labor agreements may offer certain benefits, it is vital to consider the unique challenges they present to small and medium-sized companies as well. These agreements can stifle competition, increase costs, create administrative burdens, limit hiring flexibility. They can also undermine the vital role that small businesses play in our economy and our communities. So I think it's crucial that we ensure prioritize policies that foster an environment where all businesses, large and small, can succeed. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Slobodian, for your presentation today.
Would you like to respond?
Thanks, Minister.
Ms. Byram?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you, Mr. Slobodian, for making a presentation here tonight and giving us, again, another perspective to the impact that this can have, especially on maybe small business. I'm wondering if you can maybe expand a little bit further and explain just what the impact of Bill 7 would be on your membership and small business.
Tyler Slobodian.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, we're doing some initial research right now to see exactly what the numbers would be, but we have some good data out there that does already say the majority of businesses are already kind of fighting those tight margins, and I think wage costs are already the number one cost constraint. So any additional increased costs at this point will put many over the edge. So yeah, happy to share that data when we have it in the near future.
Are there further questions for the presenter? All right, thank you very much for taking the time tonight. I would now like to call on Mr. Connor Ketchen. All right, Mr. Connor Ketchen will be put to the bottom of the list. I'd like to call on Mr. Dave McPhail. All right, Mr. Dave McPhail will go to the bottom of the list as well. Mr. Peter Whiteman. Mr. Whiteman, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Minister, members of the committee. By way of introduction, I'm Peter Whiteman. I'm the Executive Director of the Construction Labor Relations Association of Manitoba, short form CLR. I've held that position since 1996. You're looking at the only person in this room who's actually negotiated project labor agreements for a variety of government parties over the decades, written them, created them, negotiated them. So you're looking at the only expert in the room here who can really talk to you in real terms about the value of project labor agreements. Just going to say that right up front. Now, I have some written statements, and I've heard a lot of what's been said by my colleagues and other folks that have chosen to come here and speak this evening. So I'll just get through my comments, my written comments, and then I'm going to turn into sort of just a general conversation of my experience with project labor agreements. Who is the CLR? The CLR is an entity that was created in the early 60s. Its focus, and continues to be its sole focus, it's a construction association whose members are the major infrastructure contractors in Manitoba who employ unionized tradespeople across all trade scopes. What I do is I represent their interests when I sit down with my building trade partners to negotiate province-wide collective agreements, project labor agreements, and a variety of other issues, lobbying government, etc. The CLR contractors build Manitoba. The lights are on. We built that. The water flows. We built that throughout the province. The hockey rinks, the hospitals, we built that. Go to Portage and Main and look at every building. We built them all. So we build Manitoba. We're not building Max Milks. We're not building apartment buildings. We're building the infrastructure that makes our province run, i.e. economic development. And we've been doing that since the 60s. Now, we are the go-to organization that owners, and in this context of this bill and this piece of legislation that this bill wishes to repeal, you are the owner, government. This bill is specifically about the removal of a piece of legislation that, with all due respect, nobody came to my association, to me, to talk to me about whether it was a good idea to take both of government's arms and tie them behind their back as they go in to prosecute a very complicated major infrastructure project that they're the owner of. That's like tying someone's arms behind their back and throwing them in the lake. It's not a good outcome. Project labor agreements, as you've heard, all of the various benefits that come out of it, and trust me, they're all real, but most importantly, who are they driven by? They're not driven by the unions. They're driven by the owner. I meet with corporate owners week in and week out for the past roughly 30 years, coming to meet with me to talk to me about project development in this province. Depending on the size of the project, and we're usually talking about significant ones like the Simplot project. I wrote that PLA. Pine Falls paper, industrial plant. I wrote it, negotiated it. The floodway agreement. The government asked me to be their lead negotiator, write and negotiate that, which I did. It was a massive success. All of these have been massive success projects. On time, on budget. All the goals that the owner came in and said, hey, we want to make sure that we're going to develop the next workforce that's going to go forward in time. So the folks that are working on this project today as journey persons, 20 years from now, they're going to be retired. We need the next workforce so that the next time we come back to this province and we want to build a hospital, we want to build a water treatment facility, we don't have to go outside the province to get the skilled labor. It's already here because we invested that as an owner, government, as an owner of the project. You may not be building it yourself. You're going to farm that out to a general contracting firm who will manage it for you. But as the owner, the folks that write the check, you own that project, right? So as an owner, you can say, hey, we have a thing in this province called minimum wages for the construction industry. Everybody's got to pay minimum wages as per CWA. That's your legislation. That's in the PLA. Oh, by the way, after 40 hours, you get time and a half overtime. That's in the Employment Standards Act. Your act. It's your property. It's not mine. It's not theirs. It's yours. So as an owner, the idea of community benefit agreements, AKA a PLA, are the same. They're synonymous with each other. So for this particular situation, and I'm not sure what Ms. Milner was referring to, the repeal of this is not going to require the government of Manitoba going forward to use a PLA. You have your choice. You could use it or not use it, but you have the choice. Right now, you have no choice. That's bad business. The amount of corporate folks that I have been dealing with since this piece of legislation, probably the worst piece of legislation I've seen in my 35 years working in this province, probably the worst one. Where did this come from? Who was the brain trust that came up with this idea? As an owner of a mega project, just look at the rest of the world. Mega projects, which you folks are involved with, like dams, like water treatment facilities that take 10 years to build. These are mega projects for our province. You want to have every bullet that you have available for you as an owner to make sure that project goes off perfectly, right? It spans many governments, usually. So you, as a government, looking out across the timeline, you want to have the ability to manage it properly. You drive the PLA, not the unions. When I meet with the unions, the deal's pretty much done. I go in with them and say, here's what the owner of the project wants. They come back and say, okay, we're okay with that. We'd like something though. We'd like RAND formula. And the owner says, no problem, because we need your people to build this. We don't need 50 people. We need 500 people. And the only place you can get 500 skilled tradesmen in a certain category, carpenters, electricians, laborers, that category, not total. The only place in this country you can get that is through the labor movement. They have the ability to bring people from all over the country to prosecute the project in Manitoba, okay? So if you don't allow the government to have the ability to create such a document that allows them to bring people in, you're just spinning your wheels. Your project is not going to go off the way you think it's going to go off. It's not going to be organized very well. And I can tell you, the general contractors that would be interested in even doing this job aren't going to be very interested in doing it because they know it's going to be a mess. The PLA creates structure for big, complicated projects that span many years in their development. General contractors are risk-averse organizations. Their entire organization, from top to toe, is focused on risk mitigation. And not having a PLA on a project, the types of which we're talking about with this bill, those types of projects are filled with risk. The PLA mitigates a lot of it. It allows the owner to look at, in minutia detail, you as government can say, hey, we want First Nations quotas. Maybe that's not the right word, but First Nation employment opportunities. We want women working on this project. We want the next generation of skilled tradespeople, i.e. apprentices, developed on this long-term project. These are the goals of the owner, you. You tell that to me, I go to them, and guess what? They all go, yeah, we're on board with that. No problem. That's why PLAs make sense. It's an organizational document, nothing more, nothing less, and it's your call as government. It's like you're trying to build a house, but you say, you know what, I want you to build my house, but no carpenters allowed. Just plumbers and electricians. Well, who's going to do the framing? That's what I meant by tying your hands behind your back. We are a small province, population-wise.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Whiteman. We're out of time at the moment. We're actually having some technical difficulties at the moment. The broadcast has went down, so we're going to go into a recess. My apologies. Before we get to questions for you, we're going to try to get the broadcast up and running. So we're going to be in recess until that is taken care of. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Thank you, Mr. Whiteman, for your remarks. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter?
I do.
Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteman, for your presence here tonight, for your comments. I was wondering what, in your opinion, was the impacts on our provincial economy writ large the ban had on our provincial economy.
Just one second. Mr. Whiteman?
Excuse me. Is significant. And I can only speak in an anecdotal basis, but because of my role and what I do in this province, been doing for many, many decades, major owners of projects corporately come and visit with me on a regular basis, weekly. And when this act came into play, and you have to understand, these are folks that are going across Canada and they're touching base. It's like a touchstone they do with the CLRs in each province. And we're private entities. We're not a government thing. We're not affiliated with each other in province. We're individual organizations. But they come to us because they know we understand what's going on in the market space, labor supply issues, legislative concerns. I would spend half an hour of the first hour of the meeting, we usually have an hour, trying to explain to them that they can do a project labor agreement in this province because they came in with the idea that they were not allowed to do one, to build a corporate project. This kind of legislation has a damaging impact when it's not well thought through, okay? You don't see that. I see that. If I had all that time added up that I've spent dealing with this, forgive me, nonsense, I'd probably have another 2 years to my life at the end of the day. I know I'm going to be laying on my deathbed wondering, gee, I wish I had that time back. I'm serious. Am I annoyed? You're damn right I'm annoyed. And that has an impact because they come in here already wanting to...
Sorry, Mr. Whiteman, just to interrupt, just to remind you of just the language, actually. Please continue.
Yeah, I'm a little annoyed. This is an opportunity for me to vent a little bit to the folks who can make a correction, a smart correction. Get it done. Don't delay. Okay? Those same major players are the same folks that you need to build your next infrastructure project, the general contractor element. I'm telling you, they are not going to come to this province, and sometimes you need them from out of province. Companies like PCL as well, locally here. Massive concerns about taking on a major government infrastructure project where they know, drill down on labor supply issues, drill down on safety issues. That's what they're all about, risk mitigation. If they can't do a PLA, they're going to walk away. They're going to walk away. They're just not even going to approach you. That's bad for business, for the government's business. What will result? Your costs will go up. Your project issues will expand. All you have to do is look at the North End project. And I know that's not a provincial sanctioned project, it's a city project. And I've been dealing with that project since the South End project, where, with all due respect, the city made some very bad decisions about who they were employing. They should have done a PLA. I spoke to them about it for many, many, many months. They chose at the last minute to not do that, and their project, was a bit of a mess. And I told them, and it's on the record, if they make the same approach for North End, which is 10 times the South End project, they'll bankrupt the city. Guess what? It's a problem. They're not doing a PLA. I cannot believe that the brain trust at the city has chosen to not do a PLA for a major, the biggest infrastructure project the city of Winnipeg has ever had in its history. It's screaming for a project, a benefit community agreement, whatever you call it, an ABC agreement. It's an agreement to help the owner manage the project. It's just smart business. The details are what the owner wants. Paying the bill. To not allow them to do it is, I'm not allowed to swear. It's stupid. Stupid.
We only have a little bit of time left, but do other members have questions for the presenter?
Is there leave to ask another question?
Sorry, is there leave to ask another question?
Agreed.
Agreed. Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteman. I just want to make a comment and say thank you for coming here and sharing your comments and your perspective.
Mr. Whiteman.
Running the room, so pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm not following your protocols.
Thank you. Do we have leave to ask a further question? Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Just while you're up here, Mr. Whiteman, earlier Mr. Rebeck mentioned the Labor Management Review Committee's consensus decision on the Employment Standards Amendment regarding the extended sick leave. Do you have any comments about that? You were the chair of the LMRC or co-chair at the time.
Mr. Whiteman.
I appreciate the question. Thank you very much. Mr. Rebeck did mention me by name in his presentation, so to have the opportunity to respond, I think, is fair game. I have no issues whatsoever, and I 100% support the detail of his presentation. I'm on board with it 100%. It's in the record. I don't need to repeat it. But the LMRC, and I'm the longest serving member on LMRC for close to 30 years. I've been on that. I'm on the Manitoba Labour Board too, been on that for a long time. I'm one of the government's 8 appointed conciliation mediation officers. Like, I'm immersed in this stuff. And everything that Mr. Rebeck said about what occurred is 100% accurate and was extremely annoying for a group of folks who get together. We're not paid to do it. We work many long hours trying to help government, whoever that may be, and as I've been there for close to 30 years, all those governments. We're there as sort of the wise owls to help government with issues that they are bringing forward that affect the employer-employee relationship. Sometimes the ideas are good. They need to be sort of tweaked to work with labor, to work with the management of the big companies in this province so that we could come back to government in a very focused way and say, change this, change that, you're good to go. Or here's an idea that you're not thinking about that you should be thinking about so you get ahead of something. It's a fantastic committee, and it's very unique to Manitoba. So what Mr. Rebeck said is that's our esprit de corps. We figure it out. So I'm 100% on board with what he said about the issues he was talking about. Hopefully I answered the question without making a big speech. But
Thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the time tonight. I'd like to call Mrs. Lois Rustin. Okay, she'll be dropped to the bottom of the list. I'd like to call Mr. Ron Castell. Ron Castell, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and speak to you today about this project-led agreements, Bill 7. I don't know what else I can say in regards to what has been said already about the benefits of the PLA, but I'm here today from the ground, from working in the front lines at Kiosk. I was a labor relations individual for Kiosk and for our unions. And my specialty there was the Indigenous liaison for the partners, the 4 partners up at Kiosk. But also I had experienced all the safety meetings that we had with our contractors, all the labor disputes that we had with our contractors and our employees, our union members, and also with our community partners. So my perspective on the PLA is that I lived it, I seen it, and I delivered it, and it was prosperous. It was prosperous right across the north. Me, I'm a northerner. Me, I come from Leaf Rapids. I'm a miner by trade. My father was a miner for 35 years, Inco and Hudson Bay. They were also PLAs as well. My father got a job. He became PLA. Dan Highway recruited him. So it was like a progression where I got the opportunity to represent the North and the communities that we served through this PLA, the 4 communities, but also our union members, our 2,500 union members that worked on that Kias Dam. So when you talk about the benefits, when you talk about the outcomes, when you talk about a complete project and the cost and the legacy that's left, we're talking about a PLA that affected those communities, that allowed those communities to get hired, that allowed those communities to have the purchasing power through their members to get employed, their members to get experience and become the next workforce for another major project. They allowed them to enhance their skills in the North, to be a viable workforce. But on the flip side of that, when you talk about a PLA, what happens when you don't have it? You have a safety issue. I was sitting in many safety incidents at Kiosk and we resolved them. What we're going to do different next time so this doesn't happen again. How we're going to keep our members safe so they go home to their kids, their wives, their families at the end of the day. So there was a lot of safety precautions taken on that mega project in the North. I had the opportunity to help the East Side Road prior to coming to Kiosk. I worked with Barons River. I helped the contractor train local people because the East Side was also a PLA. And they used that method to provide training for local workers in Barons River. So I had the opportunity to help a contractor train local workers to become truck drivers, to become rock truck drivers, to become drillers, to become blasters, and build that road to connect with society from an isolated community to an all-season road. And they learned skills, and there was safety in there as well, a big safety component. So when you talk about PLAs and you talk about what's the end of the dotted line, we're talking purchasing powers for the company, purchasing power for the partnerships and the communities. We're also talking about the legacy of that project. And me being firsthand, being able to have that opportunity to work in that project for 5 years, it was like an awesome opportunity. And working for Allied Hydro and the union members that they represent was an honor and a privilege to do that work. And in closing, I just say PLAs are an awesome opportunity for the government to share the wealth, not to business only concept. Bottom line, this is how much we're willing to sacrifice safety in order to get a project that PLAs are. We're going to invest. We're going to invest in our workers. We're going to invest in safety so they can come back and be prosperous for the next job. So in closing, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, by all means.
Thank you very much. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Castel, for coming today in front of the committee and presenting. We really appreciate your presence here. My question for you is, in future PLAs, what do you think First Nations communities should be or would be asking for?
Mr. Castel.
Oh, Excellent question. I'm glad you asked that question. Because prior to me coming to Kiosk with my background's HR, my background's labor relations, my background is community development, my background is training the local workforce. When I got to Kiosk, there was a lot of questions the communities had asked. What is a union? What is a labor agreement? What is a collective bargaining agreement? A lot of communities weren't aware. When I got there, I was doing a lot of liaisoning with those communities, or those 4 communities, explaining the roles, explaining my role as their union rep, explaining my role, how I'm there to help them, explaining my role so they understand how they can utilize the PLAs to benefit their communities through training, through apprenticeship, through collaboration with the contractors. So when you have an Indigenous representation on a mega project like that, it smooths out a lot of roads, especially in truth and reconciliation that's coming out nowadays. It's vital that you have someone that has that expertise, that ability to talk to all the partners and relay that back to your members. So that's why it's important.
Thank you. Do other members have questions? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Castell, for being present here tonight and again sharing your experiences and your contributions to the North on the various projects that you've worked on. So thank you again for being present here tonight.
Mr. Castell, would you like to respond?
I'd just like to say thanks for listening. You know, it's an opportunity to, like the last presenter is to, you're the owners. It's an opportunity for you to say, yes, let's be owners. Let's continue that prosperity.
Honorable Minister Marcelino.
I think I'd like to correct you, Mr. Castell. We're not the owners. We are the owners together as this province. It's all of Manitoba that will own that PLA and the benefits from that agreement.
Mr. Castell, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. As Manitobans, we're all responsible. We're all here to be a prosperous province. But I'd also like to say that, you know, from a First Nation perspective, we're at the table now, right? We're here. We're here to help. We're here to enhance the PLAs.
Are there further questions for the presenter? Do we have leave for the Honorable Minister Schmidt to ask a question? Honorable Minister Schmidt.
Thank you to the committee for granting me leave, and thank you, Mr. Castell, for being here. You mentioned the concept of truth and reconciliation, and we know that certainly historically in Manitoba, mega projects like hydro dams have not always benefited all Manitobans or all communities equally. So I'd like to hear your perspective on how you think that project labor agreements can contribute to economic reconciliation here in Manitoba, something that our government is very focused on.
Mr. Castell.
Yes, thank you for the question. You know, in history, you know, our unions haven't been at the forefront and upfront with the First Nations communities of this province. But recently, you know, we have been more aware, we have been more inclusive, we have been more communicating. Our doors have been reaching out to engage a lot more with our Indigenous communities, because when you really think about it, when a major project like Kiosk, that was in someone's backyard. Whose backyard was it, right? So with that Kiosk project, they had that opportunity to hire local, right? Through a PLA, local meaning north. If you can't find the workers there, we go to the province of Manitoba. If you can't find the workers there, we go outside of that. So that really benefited those 4 communities that were part of Kiosk at that time. So moving forward, you know, being in my position as the Director of Indigenous Relations for Manitoba Building Trades, you know, I'm able to enhance the building trades a little bit more, you know, working alongside my colleagues, working alongside their colleagues, working alongside their projects, you know, able to go out and engage with the communities and train their local workers. You know, we're able to do that now. Go out to the community and train the community about labor, construction craft worker, bricklayers, insulators. You know, we're able to provide those things now. And utilizing our partnerships with Indigenous Service Canada, you know, ISET holders, all those things coming more and more and more. So it's a great opportunity to utilize these partnerships that are out there, you know.
Thank you very much for taking the time today and for providing your insight. I just want to let folks know that we've received a late written submission to Bill 7 from Joshua Lapointe. The submission has been uploaded to the MLA portal. Is there leave to have this submission included in Hansard? Agreed. Agreed, and so ordered. I'd like to call on Mr. Damien Bernard. Mr. Bernard, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Hi. Hello, my name is Damien Bernhard, and I'm the Assistant Business Manager of IBW 2085. Tonight I'm presenting to you in my capacity as a construction electrician, and I want to thank the committee for taking the time to hear the speakers this evening, and I want to thank the government and Minister of Labour for bringing forward Bill 7, which will repeal the ban on PLAs. The ban on PLAs is the only one of its kind in North America, and its damaging impacts in Manitoba skilled trade workers and the construction industry as a whole. The work I do as an IBW 2085 has been done for 64 years and has built the critical infrastructure for Manitoba's needs. I've personally worked on many projects that were built under PLAs. I've worked at Wisquatum, I've worked at Kiosk, and I worked at Kiwatanuk. During that time working up there, I got to mentor a lot of First Nations members that were local up there. I've got a good friend, Ian Beardy, who's now a journeyman. He brings his skills back to his hometown. He works on the water treatment plant there. He keeps all the infrastructure working in Bird and in Fox Lake. It's super critical that we keep PLAs like this around. Part of my history, I worked 8 years non-union before joining the union, so I have a third of my experience in the trade is non-union. When I was working at Kiwatanuk, I worked directly beside non-union companies that worked under the PLA. Those companies were not forced to be union. Those members, those people that came in and worked on that project, they got to enjoy the benefits of being union by getting the high wages, they got the pension, they got the benefits while they were on site. When they left, they went with their company back to the jobs that they had. Some of them actually joined the unions after because of their preference to get these wages and benefits. So the fact that it's forced unionization is not true. The repeal and the ban on PLA signals to me that the province is keen to invest on workforce development strategy that will benefit Manitobans. BC has some incredible statistics following their implementation of PLA framework that I'd like to share with you now. 91% of workers on infrastructure projects are BC residents. Indigenous and female participation in BC's construction industry is less than 5% for both groups overall, but under PLAs, there's 15% Indigenous participation and 9% female participation. The 9% female participation saw 10% of all hours worked and the 15 Indigenous participation saw 14% of all hours worked. When I hear stats like that, I can't help but be hopeful that here in Manitoba, we are able to proudly tell the similar story. Bill 7 is an important first step in ensuring the government can reinstate framework that's going to give Manitoba the social and economic outcomes we need as a province. I am hopeful that we will that they will immediately move to legislate framework for PLAs, ensuring that workers like myself have fair wages and economic opportunities while building critical infrastructure and our communities need.
Thank you, Mr. Bernhard, for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Bernhard, for your participation today, and thanks for all your really hard work over the years on all those big projects for our province. My question is that you mentioned that you were non-unionized for a third of your career and then unionized for the rest so far. What do you think was the biggest difference between that time and this time that you're unionized now? What are some contrasts or changes that you feel you can highlight?
Mr. Bernhard.
When I first started in the trade, I did commercial residential maintenance. I actually did maintenance for Manitoba Housing and making sure anytime there was issues, would clean that up. But I wasn't learning anything new in my trade. The safety wasn't there that I needed. I had people threaten me, try to jump me for my tools while working in Manitoba Housing. I got tired of that race, and I went to the union hall and wanted to pursue different avenues in my career. As soon as I became a unionized member, I got to go up to Thompson and work at Valet Incal. I got to travel all across Canada. I've been in the mines all over Esterhazy, Potash. I've been in BC. I've been in Northern Baffin Island. I've enjoyed many things from the union, so now it's my turn to give back, and that's why I became a union representative.
Thank you. Are there other members of the committee that would like to ask a question? Ms. Byram?
Just to thank you, Mr. Bernhard, for making your presentation here tonight and again sharing your experience in union and non-union. So thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for taking the time tonight. I would now like to call Mr. Joshua Fisher, who is online. If Mr. Joshua Fisher could turn on your microphone and your video, you can begin your presentation when you're ready.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to listen to my submission. My name is Josh Fisher. I'm here to speak in favor of PLAs. Just a little bit of background. So when I was in my mid-20s, I was struggling to find good employment, good paying employment. So I was looking for something that would be stable. So I applied to the laborers union, and within 6 months, I'd received a call to work at the Kiosk Hydro Dam under a PLA. With priority being given to Manitoba residents, it enabled me to be hired on this project. Working at Kiosk with the union under a PLA allowed me to save for a house, provided me with great benefits, wages, and a pension that supported my family. At the time, it was the highest wages that I'd ever earned working construction, so that was huge for my family. Working under a PLA is not only good for Manitoba workers, it's good for Manitoba. It keeps a lot of the wages in Manitoba by providing priority hiring to Manitobans. Working at Kiosk, I personally saw the socio-economic benefits and skills Indigenous and Northern residents gained as a result of priority hiring at the Kiosk project under the PLA. Again, I really support PLAs and keeping the work in Manitoba for Manitobans.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Do we have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Mr. Fisher, I just wanted to thank you for your time and effort in presenting to committee tonight. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, Mr. Fisher?
No, thanks for listening.
Ms. Byram.
I too, Mr. Fisher, would like to thank you for participating tonight. I know it's not early, it's later into the evening, and taking the time at this time to participate is appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher, would you like to respond?
No, thank you very much for you guys' time.
Thank you very much for taking the time tonight to provide your perspective. We're now going to be moving to back to Bill 9. So I'd like to call Ms. Susan Russell Cezanne. Whenever you're ready, you can begin your presentation.
Thanks. In the handouts, you will find a policy note, Manitoba's 2024 cancer stats, and CCS's April 2024 opinion poll to illuminate Manitoba's support of Bill 9. And I'm comfortable with being addressed as Ms. Russell going forward. Channy's a little bit hard to get off the tongue there. All right, so good evening, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Susan Russell Channy, and I serve as the Senior Advocacy Coordinator in Manitoba with the Canadian Cancer Society. I'm honored to be here this evening to express our strong support for Bill 9, the Employment Standards Amendment Act, extending the length of leave for serious injury and illness from 17 weeks to 27 weeks. It's a critical change and one that could make all the difference in the lives of Manitobans with cancer and their families. No one ever plans to hear the words, "You have cancer." But for 7,600 Manitobans that will be diagnosed with cancer in 2024, those words are a reality. For nearly 40% of those diagnosed, cancer will strike at a time when they are in the prime of their careers or are preparing for retirement. They may be working hard to buy their first home, paying off debt, or simply providing for their families. At these times, people are often juggling multiple responsibilities with many others depending on them, and that's why the peace of mind that unpaid job-protected leave offers is a necessary component to a healing journey. We know these are already difficult times. We are living in an affordability crisis where the rising cost of living dominates our conversations at the grocery store, at the pharmacy, and here in the legislature. Meanwhile, the costs associated with cancer are only rising. When someone faces cancer, their struggle is not just medical, but financial. People living with cancer often face a reduction in income or a rise in expenses, as well as an increased risk of unemployment due to a cancer diagnosis. As elected officials, you hear from Manitobans every day who are struggling amid a cancer diagnosis or other serious illnesses. An expanded job-protected illness leave policy reflects the realities of living with cancer. By ensuring job protection is afforded up front, having a job to return to is one less thing for a cancer patient and their family to worry about. The increased anxiety and stress resulting from financial insecurity experienced by individuals facing cancer can impact a person's psychosocial well-being and can have adverse impacts on their mental health, physical health, and the quality of life for those that care for them. By providing job security for cancer patients as they receive and recover from treatment, it will help reduce financial insecurity and help them heal and return to work as healthy and productive as possible. The amendment from 17 weeks to 27 weeks allows Manitobans the opportunity to not only return to the same job and career opportunities they had before they went on leave, but also a week to establish employment insurance coverage. The expanded unpaid job-protected illness leave to 27 weeks aligns with the federal EI sickness benefit. The expanded job-protected leave allows Manitobans to access the benefits they need to make ends meet. Manitoba's Compassionate Care Leave provides employees the opportunity to take 28 weeks of unpaid job-protected leave to care for or support a critically ill family member. Seriously ill Manitobans or injured Manitobans deserve the same opportunity to maintain their employment status and career opportunities just as those caring for them do. Ill or injured Manitobans and their families should not have to experience financial hardship or uncertainty during their cancer journey. There is hope. Thanks to advancements in treatment, more and more people are surviving cancer and returning to work. These individuals want and deserve the chance to rebuild their lives. They need to know that their job will still be there when they are ready to come back, and Manitoba has a chance to provide that opportunity. Manitoba can join the other jurisdictions that are setting the standard for job-protected leave and the standard of hope that the rest of Canada will follow. Currently, Quebec and Nova Scotia have aligned with the federal benefit. Quebec is offering 26 weeks of job-protected leave, and they started offering that in 2003. Recently, Nova Scotia's progressive conservative government passed a similar legislation. Nova Scotia's 27 weeks of unpaid job-protected leave received royal assent in 2 weeks. Manitoba support this legislation. We conducted an opinion poll in April and found that 92% of Manitobans surveyed support the expansion of unpaid job-protected illness leave to 27 weeks. That's why the Canadian Cancer Society has worked to elevate the needs of people living with cancer to push for these vital changes. Together, we have advanced the conversation around unpaid job-protected leave and advocacy on behalf of Manitobans and patients and their families. Expanding unpaid job-protected serious illness leave will reduce barriers to cancer care, help reduce the financial burden experienced by people affected by cancer, and ensure that people with cancer have the time they need to heal and return to work as healthy and productive as possible. This is particularly important during this time of financial restraint. No Manitoban should experience financial hardship during their cancer journey. It takes a society to improve the cancer journey for everyone and involves governments, employees, healthcare, and community to work together. Expanding unpaid job-protected illness leave can reduce financial burdens on cancer patients. On behalf of the Canadian Cancer Society, we wholeheartedly support and endorse Bill 9. It's more than just a smart policy, it's the right thing to do. Because while cancer doesn't wait, your job should. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Do members of the committee have questions? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Ms. Russell Chaney. I wanted to thank you for all the meetings that you've provided with me to brief me on this topic and the research that the Canadian Cancer Society has done on behalf of its members to advocate for this important amendment. I wanted to ask your opinion or your response to opposition concerns that folks would try to use fraud or something like that in order to try to get unpaid job protected leave. What is your response to that kind of concern that the opposition has raised?
Ms. Russell.
Thank you for the question. We're so happy to be here today to speak in support of Bill 9. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's will employees be asking for more time away due to expansion and unpaid job protected leave? CCS conducted an analysis of the current job protected leave legislation to examine the influence of illness and disability absences among eligible workers potentially affected by the policy. That includes non-unionized workers who met the tenure requirements and other non-eligible workers. We did not find any evidence that Manitoba's current policy increased the overall length of illness and disability absences, and Quebec's policy was associated with decreases in lengths of leave. Our research analysis clarifies that people are not found to take advantage of unpaid job-protected leave policy.
Are there further questions for the presenter? Ms. Byram?
Thank you, Ms. Russell, for your presentation today. And on this very important matter, I'm sure we have all known someone, whether it be family or friends, that have gone through severe illness, critical illness, in particular, perhaps cancer even. And I want to say thank you for taking the time, and also thank you for responding to the minister's question, and as well as giving us your handout here with some further information to follow that up. Thank you.
Ms. Russell, would you like to respond?
You're welcome. Thanks for having us today.
Are there further questions for the presenter? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Russell, for taking the time tonight. I'd like to call Mr. Patrick Tohill, who's online. Mr. Tohill, when you're ready, you can begin your presentation.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Tohill. I'm Director of Advocacy and Government Affairs for Crohn's and Colitis Canada. I'd like to begin by thanking the Chair, the Honourable Minister, and other members here tonight for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the more than 10,000 Manitobans who live with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and their families. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm calling from Toronto, which is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Crohn's and Colitis Canada acknowledges the enduring and vibrant presence, culture, history, and inherent rights of First Nations people, Métis, and Inuit across Canada on whose traditional territories we live and work. For 50 years, Crohn's and Colitis Canada has been transforming the lives of those living with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis through research, patient programs, advocacy, and awareness. We are the world's second largest charitable funder of research to cure these conditions, with more than $150 million invested since 1974. Our patient programs include peer support, scholarships, camps for children, and much more. Tonight, we're pleased to join our colleagues from the Canadian Cancer Society and others in supporting the proposed amendments to Bill 9 to extend long-term job-protected leave for those impacted by serious illness or injury from 17 weeks to 27 weeks. This measure is critical to ensuring that all Manitobans experiencing serious illness or injury are able to take the medical leave they need, and when the time comes, return to work without risking their employment. According to the most recent Canadian survey on disability in 2022, some 8 million people in Canada, 27%, reported living with a disability. Of these, only 35% report experiencing continuous limitations. Another 65% experience disabilities that are dynamic in nature, meaning they're progressive, recurrent, or fluctuating. This latter category of disability dynamics includes episodic disabilities where periods of wellness are punctuated by intermittent and often unpredictable activity limitations. Chronic illnesses such as Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, as well as other chronic illnesses including arthritis, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, would all fall under this category, along with some types of cancer and HIV, mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety, musculoskeletal conditions such as back or neck pain, and chronic fatigue syndrome. Such periods of episodic disability are unpredictable. They may be invisible to others and may also impact the employee's mental health. Many with Crohn's and colitis may even hesitate to disclose their illness to their employer unless absolutely necessary. This may be out of concern that they will not be taken seriously or due to stigma around a condition that is accompanied by diarrhea and bowel urgency that may result in a frequent need to visit a washroom as many as 20 or more times a day in some cases. Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis are the two main forms of inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD. Both are characterized by inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract that disrupts normal digestive function. This can mean unrelenting pain and fatigue, uncontrolled diarrhea, fever, rectal bleeding, and declining mental health. Extraintestinal manifestations associated with IBD include skin conditions, eye conditions, muscular and joint pain, as well as diseases of the liver, pancreas, or gallbladder. While people living with these inflammatory bowel diseases may look fine on the outside, they may be feeling far from fine inside. With the right drug therapy, inflammation can be controlled and people can live relatively well. However, these conditions are individual and not everyone will have the same experience. Even when stable on a drug, active symptoms of IBD or flares may be experienced. In some cases, flares may prove debilitating, resulting in a temporary or even prolonged absence from the workplace. Some will be hospitalized as a result of flares for 2 or more weeks, and upon release, they will require many weeks of recovery. Some may still be receiving nutrition from a feeding tube. during the first weeks, and it's not uncommon that they might also require the assistance of a personal support worker. Many will have experienced severe weight and or blood loss or even loss of muscle mass. It may be many weeks more before they're able to return to the workplace. Some may require accommodations upon their return. At some future date, Crohn's and Colitis Canada hopes to have the opportunity to work with the government to better address the needs of Manitobans with episodic disabilities through improved workplace accommodations. The longer one lives with IBD, the more likely that complications may be experienced, including bowel obstruction, intestinal rupture, fistulas in the bowel wall, malnutrition with resulting weight loss, and colorectal cancer. Some of these will require surgical intervention, which comes with an even longer recovery period. We're grateful for the Manitoba government's leadership in aligning the province's unpaid leave benefit for serious injury or illness with the federal employment insurance sickness benefit. These important changes will ensure that workers experiencing serious illness will not only be able to take full advantage of the extended EI benefits, they'll also be able to take the time off they need without fear of losing their employment. In conclusion, extending the length of job-protected illness leave from 17 weeks to 27 weeks not only aligns Manitoba's benefit with the federal EI sickness benefit, it also will make Manitoba a leader in protecting workers who are experiencing a disruption in their employment due to serious illness or injury, and provide an important safety net to these workers and their families. Those experiencing a work disruption as a result of Crohn's or colitis tell me they want nothing more than to find a way to continue to do their job or to find another job that they can do. It's critical that those who are once again able to return to their job may do so when their active symptoms are once again under control. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Toyle, for your presentation and for joining us tonight at the committee. And I also wanted to thank your CEO and President Lori Radke for her letter to me and continued advocacy of Crohn's and Colitis Canada on this important amendment change that we're hoping to bring forth here in Manitoba. My question is I think that the previous presenters on Bill 9 were able to, let the opposition understand that there was enough consultation done on this bill already through the Labor Management Review Committee process. I just would like to get your opinion on how would you address members opposite's concerns that that folks might try to fraud the system?
Mr. Tohle.
Yeah, unlike my colleague at the Canadian Cancer Society, I don't have any analysis or data to share, but anecdotally, from the people that I speak to who live with Crohn's and colitis, it's much more often the case that they are not they're not given sufficient consideration by their employers. Many are not. Many tell me they're not given accommodations that they need. People don't understand that they need to be close to a washroom. In returning to work, people don't understand the time that they need to take off and their long recovery. Many who are in who don't have the protection of a good contract, whether it's a good white collar job or whether it's a union contract, people in retail and other more precarious industries, are literally worried, that they're going to need longer than the time that they're allotted to recover. So I just asked the committee to consider, absent evidence that people are taking advantage, I think we need to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Are there other members that have questions? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Tallhill, for presenting here tonight and joining us at this time of evening. And again, I want to say thank you for sharing the information, and I found it very informative. And thank you so much.
Would you like to respond?
Thank you. Nothing to add.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time tonight and for providing your perspectives. All right, I'd like to call David Grant for Bill 21. When you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Could I speak to 7?
Sorry?
We were doing 7. Could I do my?
You have 10 minutes, but you can.
Okay.
Sorry, you're.
I was lined up for 7.
We have you signed up for Bill 21 at the moment, as well as Bill 7, but can you speak to Bill 21 right now?
Okay. No, I think I have nothing to add to what other people have said on Bill 21. Thank you. And I did want to offer my apologies for not being here when called before, but I was down the hall and lined up to speak there. And I guess it's related to Bill 21. If the in the old days, when we spoke here, there was a list, and the list was the speaking and the how can we say, the being out of town issue that crept in a few years ago. But anyway, it would be nice to see that again, because if I'd known when my name was coming up, I would have been here and not wasted your time that way. So thank you.
Would you like to provide some comments right now, or are you passing on?
Not on Bill 21, but just on the fact that I wasn't here when it popped up before.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to now go to Bill 7, to the people that were dropped to the bottom of the list. So is Mr. Sean Wood here? Okay, so they are going to be dropped from the list. Oh, now we have David Grant for Bill 7. My apologies for making you come up twice. Please proceed with your presentation.
Anyway, on Bill 7, the bill is very short and obvious. There is space for an explanatory note at the bottom of it on the website. And what it says is what the bill says, going to be deleted. The act is going to be revoked. It would have been useful, I think, to people reading that to have some idea of what the previous bill did that's being revoked. When I searched on the website for the previous bill by name, I got all the deliberation years ago when 2017 was brought in, but nowhere did it say what it did. And that was just my comment on it as a process. It would be nice to not spend the whole evening on this because I didn't know who's coming up next, but also the bill. And really for Bill 7, I think it was very eloquently explained by people three speakers ago, and I would just revert to them and their comments, and I have nothing really to add to that, other than it would have been nice going into it without a lot of research to know what Bill 7 and its predecessor were intended to do. That's a comment on it and on the explanatory note that was brief. And I think there's room in that box to do. Other boxes have lots of detail, and I would have liked to see more detail on that one. So again, that's a rules sort of thing, housekeeping rather than the bill. But that was my comment on it, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do members of the committee have questions for Mr. Grant? Honourable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Mr. Grant, for coming down to the ledge and spending time with us tonight. It's really great to know that members of the public are very attunely aware of what we're doing in here. Sometimes we think nobody's paying attention, and you certainly are. And a lot of times folks don't care about legislation that's going by, and it's important that people do. And so thanks for your participation, and look forward to seeing you again.
Mr. Grant, would you like to respond?
And thank you very much for the kind words. And what I'm saying, would have been nice if that was more stuff was in that explain box. I can do research. I've done lots of it for decades. But for the person just casually looking at what's going on around here, what was there didn't really do the job. I think the guy I was sitting next to during the break explained to me that one of the people here had completely I think during her talking points here, had completely misunderstood Bill 7. So having the explanatory notes saves people a bit of embarrassment, and it would have been useful. So that's a lesson we could learn for future bills, and not just what the bill does, but what the implications are. How is it going to affect my life? And because some of this stuff will affect these workers, explain very much PLAs and what they're good for. And knowing that as you read over the page on the website would have been useful. So thank you.
Are there further questions for Mr. Grant? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Grant, for being part of this tonight and putting your comments on the record. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Mr. Grant, for taking the time tonight. All right, next we're calling Mr. Connor Ketchen. Okay, so they're going to be dropped from the list. After that is Mr. Dave McPhail. Okay, they're going to be dropped from the list. Mrs. Lois Rustin. Okay, she'll be dropped from the list. Okay, that concludes the presentations for the three bills. All right. In what order does the committee wish to proceed with the clause-by-clause consideration of these bills? Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Just by numerical order of the bills.
It's been suggested that we move by a numerical order. Is that agreed? Agreed and so ordered. We're going to be considering clause by clause of Bill 7. Does the minister responsible for Bill 7 have an opening statement?
Yes.
Honorable Minister Marcelino.
I'd like to thank those that came out to present on this bill tonight, and I would also like to thank the staff from Labor and Immigration and Consumer Protection and Government Services who are here to support me tonight. This bill will bring back the option for public sector employers to tender or enter into project labor agreements. At the moment, Manitoba is the only outlier in Canada that bans project labor agreements. We know that the previous government's decision to ban PLAs was rooted in ideology and not in fact. Project labor agreements work out collective agreements in advance of the building of critical infrastructure. PLAs are used globally and are recognized as useful in stabilizing the workforce and wages, addressing safety, preventing work stoppages, and reducing the risk of disruptions. In Manitoba, PLAs have a long history of being a tool in supporting apprentices, contributing to local communities by hiring local and ensuring projects are completed on time and within budget. Consultations were undertaken with departmental staff from Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure, Consumer Protection and Government Services, and Finance in the preparation of this bill. This bill fulfills our government's commitment to protecting workers' jobs, standing up for workers' rights, and making it easier for Manitobans to get good-paying jobs. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the presenters that participated in this tonight and shared their views and their perspectives. And that's part of what the process is, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you to the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass?
Pass.
Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass?
Pass.
Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed.
Agreed.
The bill shall be reported. We'll now consider Bill 9. Does the minister responsible for Bill 9 have an opening statement? Honorable Minister Marcelino.
Thank you, Chairperson. I want to thank everyone joining us today to discuss this important bill and making time to contribute to the development of measures to protect the jobs of Manitobans and to stand up for the rights of working people. I want to thank all the presenters who made time today to be part of this process. This process is unique to us in Manitoba as it gives us the opportunity to the public to participate and offer comments on this proposed bill. I would also like to thank the staff from Labor and Immigration and Consumer Protection Government Services who are here to support me tonight. In 2022, the federal government made changes to employment insurance and the federal labor legislation as part of broader EI reform. These changes increased EI sickness benefits from 15 to 26 weeks and the maximum length of unpaid medical leave from 17 to 27 weeks for federally regulated employees under the Canada Labour Code. Long-term leave for serious injury or illness is currently a 17-week unpaid leave in Manitoba. To qualify, an employee must be employed by the same employer for at least 90 days. And as a result, Manitoba workers are currently not able to access enough unpaid protected leave from their jobs to receive the full extended EI benefits. We know that both the employer and labor communities, represented by the Labor Management Review Committee, has recommended that Manitoba align the Employment Standards Code with the federal government's changes to EI sickness benefits, and the Canadian Cancer Society and others have also advocated for these changes. I will also note that a probe research poll found that 92% of Manitobans support passing a law in Manitoba that would protect the job status of seriously ill and injured employees for up to a minimum of 27 weeks. This government is taking action by extending the length of long-term leave for serious illness and injury from 17 weeks to 27 weeks to align with the EI sickness benefits. These enhanced measures will protect the jobs of Manitobans and will ensure workers have the time and flexibility needed for treatment and recovery. Manitoba will join several jurisdictions that provide serious illness and injury leaves that mirror EI benefits, including the federal government, Quebec, and just most recently it was unanimously passed in Nova Scotia, while other provinces like Ontario are considering also aligning their leave with the EI sickness benefits. I'm highly interested in moving this priority mandate forward, giving our government's commitment to protecting jobs and always standing up for the rights of working people. We want to support Manitobans who are recovering from serious illness or injury, and I hope that the opposition feels the same and would support this bill. With these short remarks, I thank the presenters again today and the committee for their consideration of this bill.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Ms. Byram?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the presenters who, from the Cancer Society and Crohn's and Colitis, and the presentation that they made here today, and the information that they shared with committee. Serious injury and illness, I'm sure we've all been affected, whether it be family or friends, and impacts one's life in a variety of ways. And look forward to seeing this go through.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass?
Pass.
Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass?
Pass.
Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass?
Pass.
Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 4 pass?
Pass.
Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. I'd like to inform the committee that under our Rule 85, Bracket 2, the following membership substitution has been made for this committee effective immediately. Honourable Minister Schmidt for Honourable Minister Marcelino. Thank you. Does the minister responsible for Bill 21 have an opening statement?
I do.
Honourable Minister Schmidt.
Oh. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I'd like to start by thanking the departmental staff that were able to join us here tonight for their support. The purpose of Bill 21, the Public Schools Amendment Act, is to reduce barriers and improve access to school for children residing in Manitoba. It proposes amendments to the Public Schools Act to change the right to attend school from age 6 to 5 years old and the compulsory school age from 7 to 6. These changes better align Manitoba with the rest of Canada and will come into effect for the next school year. We anticipate that these changes will have minimal impact to enrollment numbers, as the vast majority of children in Manitoba already start school at the age of 5 or 6. We will ensure to monitor the situation closely and help school divisions should they see a major increase in their enrollment, but again, we don't anticipate that. Additionally, this bill seeks to expand the definition of a resident pupil. This will ensure that children are able to attend school in the division where they reside as long as they are living with a responsible adult. This better recognizes the multitude of family and care arrangements in our province and prioritizes children being in school regardless of who is caring for them. The amendments will also ensure temporary residents' right to send their children to a public school. These amendments will contribute to a more equitable and inclusive public education system and support the success of all Manitoba students. Unfortunately, this bill was delayed, so tonight it will require a minor technical amendment. But I hope that we will have the support of the committee and that we can all agree that children having access, earlier access to education in our communities is a good thing. Thank you. Merci, Miigwech.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I thank the minister for the statement, recognizing that she is relatively new in this role. I'll reiterate some comments that I've made previously with regard to this bill. We have no issue as the official opposition caucus with the premise of this bill whatsoever, and never did. In fact, I believe it was something that we were pursuing when we were still in government as well. What we have issue with and why the bill was held over was due to the rapidly expanding student population in our public school system, and the fact that initially when the previous Minister of Education brought this bill forward, he couldn't answer the question about how many students that this decision-making would add to our public school system. We know that Holloway education is alive and well in our public school system as it is, and so we think it's irresponsible to bring forward a piece of legislation and implement it that would raise the number of students in our student population without knowing exactly what that number is. And so on top of that, we have a government who's canceled the construction of 9 new schools and have brought forward no plans to build additional school capacity across the province. And so that's why we held this bill over, to give the new government an opportunity to make those plans known to Manitobans and to do some of that research. When asked at the second reading bill debate, the minister who at that time was designated to respond, the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, Consumer Protection and Government Services, admitted on the record that that work hadn't been done and that she couldn't answer the question. And so we have no assurance. And so unfortunately, we're left with likely not supporting this bill as it moves forward for a vote today. So hopefully the new minister will undertake to do that work to ensure that we have adequate space in our public school system to welcome all students at age 6 when this bill is implemented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We thank the member. All right, during the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass?
Yes.
Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass?
Pass.
Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass?
Pass.
Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 4 pass?
Pass.
Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 5 pass?
No.
I hear a no. The floor is open for questions. Sorry, Honourable Minister Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I move that Clause 5, Sub 1 of the bill be amended by striking out July 1, 2024 and substituting the day it receives royal assent.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister Schmidt that Clause 5, Bracket 1 of the bill be amended by striking out July 1st, 2024 and substituting the day it receives royal assent. The amendment is in order. The floor is open for questions. Seeing no questions, is the committee ready for the question? The question before the committee is as follows: that Clause 5, Bracket 1 of the bill be amended by striking out July 1st, 2024 and substituting the day it receives royal assent. Shall the amendment pass?
Pass.
The amendment is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 5 as amended pass?
Pass.
Clause 5 as amended is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
No. I heard a no. The floor is open for questions. All those in favor of the enacting clause, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
In my opinion, the ayes have it. The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill as amended be reported?
No.
I heard a no. The floor is open for questions. All those in favor of reporting the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
In my opinion, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, can I request on division from committee? Okay, then.
We'll recognize you.
Mr. Grant?
Thank you.
Sorry, Jackson, my apologies.
At this hour, I'll take it. On division, please, Mr. Chair.
The bill shall be reported as amended on division. The hour being 9:51, what is the will of the committee?
Rise.
The committee shall rise. Thank you.